me the cereal kids are crazy for. Cthulhu. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity. Crazy crunchity. Crazy
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y. Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Happy Saturday, Smite fans. You are watching the SCC. We've got some great action for you here today. My name is Dulcin, and I'm excited to bring you a big matchup over here in EU. I believe it's Pandamonium versus Team Joystick. Some big names on these rosters, so it's sure to be a fun matchup. Taco joins me. Taco, always nice to get some SCC action to get the weekend started.
Yeah, the side of Europe, I think, has really been kind of elevating things in the past couple of weeks to now, and I think that a lot of teams basically just trying to solidify themselves a little bit more so in those standings, and from the schedule, you can already see Pandamonium, Joystick, should be a pretty solid matchup.
Should be, and so that'll be our matchup today, and then after the SPL, you can watch the other matchup here in EU, and that's Snake Hunters versus Elysium. And then tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll have the NA set, Sleekness versus Herculean Hooves, and then Tiburones versus Average Joes will be after the SPL tomorrow to round out this week in the SCC. Let's see how the EU standings shake down going into this matchup. Very important, of course, early on here. It's a more condensed schedule than what you see over in the SPL. So you see all these teams in the SPL with these massive win-loss numbers. So each individual set matter so much more here for these teams. And for Pandamonium and Team Joystick, very close here in the standings. Team Joystick yet to lose, and Pandamonium trying to keep pace with them. They'd be tied for second, of course, with a win here for Pandamonium. So let's talk about this Pandamonium team a little bit here. Taco, Kana, Streak Up, Joshi, Sarpei, and Emilzi. Emilzi wanted to get back into the competitive side of things, joined up with this Pandamonium team. And at 1-1, they've looked okay here in EU.
Yeah, he's been rocking it, and I think the main thing whenever you have players that are coming into a different sort of team environment, especially ones with as much experience as somebody like Emilzi, I do believe he adds a lot, but mostly it's the frontline implications that I'm keeping an eye out for on this Pandamonium roster, because Sarpei has definitely been a jungler that I think has been really fun to follow along with in the European region. I think especially because of the fact that you just think adapting for the most part. But now with the additions of like Cheerio, now with the additions of Sarpei, that jungle role, it's starting to look a lot more competitive, basically. And I think that this is a great chance, essentially, for both of these teams to kind of just see how far they can take it.
And I like that you bring up adapting. We won't go too far into that Elysium team because they're not playing in this set. But these types of matchups, when you're playing up against the other team that's kind of battling for that second place spot, if we're assuming that Elysium is just going to run the table, these matchups become ever so important, and I'm glad you bring up Sarpei, because when you're going up against teams like this, and like Team Joystick, who has a well-known jungler on their side as well, you've really got to step up to the plate and knock it out of the park. So we can talk about Team Joystick and the big-name jungler that recently joined this team, left the SPL as a coach, and now has joined Team Joystick, and that is Cheerio, of course, and always fun to watch Cheerio play.
Given the fact that Joystick right now are currently sitting tied with Elysium for that first place position, I think that Cheerio's introduction to this team and to the SCC in general is one to be deeply appreciated, not just for this team, but also for us, because I think it's really cool that Cheerio had He could have just sat there chilling in the Smite Pro League, man, but that just wasn't satisfactory for him. So when a player has that much competitive drive to compete, I think that it is usually pretty representative in the gameplay, and haven't had a chance personally to witness Team Joystick in their matches, so I'm definitely happy that we're getting our first, or I'm getting my first little insight, I should say, to what this team is able to basically put down on the table. But if it's anything like the Cheerio that we've seen in the Pro League, I'm sure that Team Joystick are definitely not going to make this easy for Pandamonium. And again, with the schedule having alluded to the fact that Snake Hunters versus Elysium matchup later on, this is a really big set for both of these teams. Because it could be a chance for Joystick to potentially break away, or it could be an opportunity for Pandamonium to tie things up. Yeah,
and when you get a guy like Cheerio joining the team, it really feels like it just elevates everyone around him. I mean, what an opportunity for Ikram, Wamogal, Sap, Calvin to play with one of the storied junglers in the SPL, and Cheerio can kind of quench that competitive thirst that he still has. So that battle in the jungle is going to be pretty fun to watch here, Sarpe versus Cheerio. And picks and bans for game number 1 will tell us the story and set the stage a little bit better here for what we should expect between Team Joystick and Pandamonium. I don't know if we've really seen, I mean, every once in a while at the SCC level you'll see kind of a big detraction from the SPL meta. They are playing a week behind as far as updates go. So for a while there, you know, Benevolence stuck around. I think we're beyond Benevolence here in the SCC. But similar mindset through the first couple of bans. Odin gets taken away, Tiamat off the table as well. But a Heimdall ban, that's a little bit different.
Kind of adding on to what you were just mentioning there, and it kind of plays into that whole Heimdall ban to begin with, but teams can look, I think, on this level at more individual base bans, so actually kind of surprising to see so much emphasis being placed outside of that jungle aspect, because that was something that I was wondering might become a little bit more contested here between Sarpe and Cheerio, but it seems as though Team Joystick feel the most confident with this Artemis lock-in. The response to the Osiris, that's been, I think, one of the most popular first pick options as of late, not just for the Smite Pro League, but also for this Challenger circuit in both NA and EU.
Wow.
So for Osiris and Gilgamesh to now be the immediate responses, that is a lot of lockdown and dive that this Artemis is going to have to try and deal with.
Yep, and when you're drawing comparisons from the SCC to SPL meta, Artemis, Osiris, Gilgamesh, and then, of course, Odin, Tiamat, Morgan, Le Fay, all the ones that are already banned out. That is priority at the SPL level, so we're seeing those similarities, of course, here. Bit different, though, and we saw the Cthulhu highlight in the pre-game highlight reel here. Cthulhu rears his heads. Cthulhu's gem and chest sale and all that sort of stuff right now, by the way, till September 6th. So jump into game, grab yourself some discounted gems and chests and all that sort of fun stuff. But Cthulhu will make his way into this game alongside of Morgan. And what a storied combo that is. Morgan plus Cthulhu. You just get two giant beasts running around in team fights.
Yeah, can't say I'm super surprised to see a team with Cheerio on it and now pulling through some of these big beefy Guardians. Yep. I think that Cthulhu... I had the immediate concern seeing the Osiris and the Gilgamesh. Okay, this Osiris needs to be protected. She needs some solid front line. I think that Cthulhu almost certainly accomplishes that, maybe even by himself. I don't even necessarily think that Team Joystick have to prioritize any further frontline initiatives. They can look for, I think, something that just has a little bit more of that counter collapse potential, because that's the main element that I think Artemis brings to the board, is that when you have the Caledonian Boar, it's very difficult to outright dominate a team fight, because you always have to be cognizant of where you're going to be stun locked due to that boar, or you don't want to forfeit, you know, your purification beads early on, sometimes even the Aegis. So the Soul and the Emoja now being added as components here, I think it introduces a nice separation factor. The Emoja especially could be really critical here up against the likes of the Cthulhu, depending on the placement of that River's Rebuke.
What a good draft that Pandamonium have put together here as well, and I'm glad you highlight the Soul, the Emoja. The Emoja falls down a bit in this draft. That's been, again, specific supports at the SPL level in the first wave of bans, so the fact that it falls down to a 7th pick here, 8, 9, 10, if I'm doing my math correctly, a little bit surprising. But the Bacchus for Team Joystick, you mentioned that between Cthulhu and Morgan, Team Joystick might be okay as far as kind of that stalwart front line goes. They get Bacchus, they get Erlang Shen. Does that kind of fill, in your mind, what was missing with this cup?
For sure, because Bacchus can introduce, I think, the super aggressive kind of initiation factor. Because I view the Cthulhu as more of a peel representative here. I think that the Cthulhu's responsibility can also be easily traded off in between this Bacchus and this Cthulhu. So now there's just more avenues of approach, I think, that Team Joystick has sort of set themselves up for. But seeing the response of all this shred potential between the Soul and the ROM, I think that those are going to be very instrumental carries in terms of just two carries in general that I think are incredibly strong at demolishing front lines, like what Team Joystick has established. Also have to keep in mind the cripple shots and the knockups and slows are typically some of the more impactful aspects for kind of preventing an Erlang Shen from just running away with things.
I mean, I'm looking at this Pandamonium. I mean, I think Team Joystick's draft is more exciting to me because it's a lot of jump in, double Cthulhu, more again.
Yeah, they're going to go crazy.
Right, going crazy, right on. That's very apt with the Cthulhu on the team. I look at Pandemonium's draft, though, and it is like straight out of the tier list, it feels like. And that's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. Osiris, Gilgamesh, Soul, Yamoja, Ram. Soul has seen a little bit less play, but still very strong from what we've seen. And we'll see if that draft can convert itself into a win in game number 1 between Pandemonium and Team Joystick. So, of course, it'll be Soul in the mid lane, up against Streak up over there on Hunter in the duo lane. When you have a Bacchus in lane, though, and this should be interesting to follow along with, you feel like you want to get aggressive, right? But then there's the Yamoja on the other side.
One nice feature of Bacchus, though, you have to remember that chug takes place from level 0. You don't have to have it leveled up in order to start stacking for the Intoxicate passive. And once you get drunk, like, sure, you don't get any procs, you don't get any magical power at level 0, but at the same time, you get the benefit of still being able to apply the stun off of the belch. So if Calvin is able to time things appropriately, he can definitely prevent Emilzy and Streak Up from having that outright clear advantage. And I think that when you look at Yamoja in general, you typically just assume, all right, we're forfeiting lane pressure here, especially when you feature the Realm Astral Arrows with that. You just have to assume it's going to be default level 1, 2, 3 pressure. But I think that Bacchus and Artemis can definitely challenge this, plus the anti-heal aspect that Calvin's going to have in his kit passively. So that'll be a nice point of anti-heal, I think, for Emilzy.
A lot of fun to see Bacchus, so I'm excited to see what it can do. This game already, it's jumping in. Emilzy out of Omi and out of health, and so he has to back away. Luckily, some sustain in that kit once you grab the heal, and then with the auto attacks, of course, for Streak Up. But you mentioned the anti-heal, and that's going to be important for Calvin here as well. What a unique, you know, there's so many interesting and really cool gods in Smite, you know, God of War, God of Death, things like that. And Bacchus is just the god of getting drunk. I don't know. I think it's pretty...
Well, he also likes eating.
He does like eating.
Food and wine, man. That's
I say silly, but, like, let's be honest. If I could be that god, I totally would be.
I
Calvin,
think we're all a little bit of Bacchus.
I think we all have a little bit of Bacchus in us. I totally agree. Emilzy's been able to top himself off here. Echrome engaged on just a bit by Streak Up and Emilzy there. So some trading going back and forth here. So maybe what turns the tides is some jungle presence. And, of course, it's way early on here. Jungler's still just level 2. But Cherio on this Erlang Shen, I think, definitely carries some weight with it. And so I'm intrigued to see how Cherio ends up playing this game.
He's already lurking for the dual lane. Emilzy had to utilize practically all of his health potions early on, but a nice ward placement from Pandemonium is going to prevent Cherio from having any sort of aggression, because now Pandemonium's dual lane, they've got to be aware that this Erlang is possibly hunting on the dual lane. But I do want to bring up the slow aspects yet again, because you have to remember the Belch does apply that a little bit of a slow as well. Calvin's got to be careful, though, with how he chooses that belly flop, because there's always the turn and burn potential. But I bring up the slows largely because Echrome, he can get a nice Transgressor's Fade off depending on how well they're able to utilize the slows that kind of surround the entirety of Team Joystick.
Yeah, it's such an interesting play style on Bacchus, where I guess you can suffer a similar fate to like a Sobek if you miss a pluck or something like that. If you use your movement, usually as an engage, and you just kind of whiff on it, Well, then you're SOL, and you know, early on, you know, the late game tankiness of Bacchus is always what we talk about. So definitely a little bit of pressure there for Calvin to choose those engagements effectively. And both supports and both hunters have done a good job of staying alive under what you would expect to be some serious pressure coming in from the other side. Well, Milgo has to go back early here. Kana just fine over on the Osiris there in that lane. Morgan versus Sol here, Taco. I think that's going to be a fun matchup to follow along with as well. We've talked about the transformation possibilities for Morgan, largely expecting it, I think, to be Cthulhu more times than not. But Sol we saw pretty often, although I'll let you go back to that if you have some other thoughts on what Sap might look to do as far as Ultimate goes.
Well, as far as the Morrigan Sol dynamic is concerned, it's like two separate types of playstyle. I think that with Sol, you're looking to just cast all your abilities up front and just try to utilize a Supernova with a solid placement, I think, to kind of be not necessarily a counter initiation every single time, but I do feel as though Joshi is going to have to be a little bit more passive, at least through this early mid-game, with how he utilizes his abilities, because if you just throw out the Stellar Burst, throw out the Supernova, and you don't leave too many tools at your disposal for the disengage, then I think Cherio and Sap can eat that right up, because you only have one Disapparate, and Erlong Shen plus a Morrigan is the potential for 2 knockups, 2 9-turns blessings. So a lot more, I think, early control in favor of Team Joystick here. But kind of straying away a little bit more so from that mid lane, I think we might need to keep an eye on what's taking place in the solo, because Cthulhu's great. He can be an awesome team fight bully, but when you're up against the likes of an Osiris, and Kana especially, someone who loves playing very aggressive in this solo lane, I think it is going to pull a little bit more attention than what Team Joystick would have originally liked to have paid towards that solo lane, because Cherio is going to have to be very on top of that blue buff. Otherwise, I think Pandamonium are going to have prime opportunities to utilize this pressure that Kana's already established in solo to look for those invades.
And I'm glad you turn an eye over towards the solo lane. Pretty standard start for Kana here between the Mask and then the Axe a little bit later on. Warding Sigil is what Lemogao picks up for his starter item here. The passive may be helping dampen, to use the tooltip word effectively there, some of the damage that this Osiris is going to put out. Surprised at all by the starter choice here for the Cthulhu?
No, I think that it just reinforces the thought process that the Cthulhu is intended entirely to be the ability absorber as this match progresses into that more team fight over the objectives point, because Moyao, he's just going to have to take it all in, because Sap, Echrome, Cherio, they need that beefiness in order to prosper, but they have so much burst. If they're actually able to utilize Mogao and just have this Cthulhu standing up, absorbing everything from Pandamonium, and at least just buy them some time, I don't know that Joshi and Streak Up, even with the shred capabilities, are going to be able to match that damage output from the Artemis and Morrigan.
And we saw that in a highlight before the game started. It was a Cthulhu who then got Odin caged with 3 members of the enemy team and just sat there and basically soaked up everything. And so that's always going to be at the forefront of the mind of Cthulhu players here. So first item, Ichavail for Cherio. Not super surprising there. But the double Ichavail on the left-hand side of the map could, Taco, maybe open up the door to early objectives here now that the Scorpion's been taken down. There's a Gold Fury up on that side of the map as well. Or do you think maybe Team Joystick continues to kind of slow play things here?
Seems to be on the mind already for Joystick. Streakup, you can see he followed Echrome. The moment that Echrome left the duo lane, first thing Streakup does is, okay, got to get eyes on this guy, figure out where he's going next. Got to make sure Team Joystick aren't trying to do anything crazy like a 7-minute Gold Fury pull. And you have to remember, 7 minutes in, no real aggression other than what we saw in that level 1-2 period in dual lane. But now you're starting to approach that period where you can start to stagger these respawn timers a little bit, and all you realistically need for either side, 1-2 picks at best, and you can look for an immediate objective pool, especially now that the Gold Fury is up for grabs.
Streak Up has Calvin behind him here. Streak Up, of course, safe. He has ultimate, he has beats, he has the roll there. The first gets used, the second gets used as well. Belly flop in, and now the third piece of defense used on top of it. But the boar from Echrome, that's got plenty of damage, and Streak Up uses everything and still comes up short.
I understand where the panic can come into play. Anytime Bacchus gets behind you, it's usually disaster. Could be disaster here for Sap, though, and it is. Nice play to react here from Pandamonium. Pull the attention back towards the mid lane, and Sap ultimately punished for trying to be a little bit too over-aggressive. Might have just assumed that it was only Sarpei trying to apply pressure with that Gilgamesh, but a really well-placed Supernova there from Joshi. Great execution to punish the mid laner so that it's not just one part of the map that's bleeding here for Pandamonium. But that was just so unfortunate for Streak Up. That's where even the slightest overstep in positioning can come back to haunt you. Also think he might have been better off just looking for the Astral Barrage immediately, because by using the beads first to cleanse that belch, he left himself completely open to getting caught out by the Caledonian Boar after the fact.
Yeah, that was pretty cut and dry for E-Chrome once Streak Up dropped down. So that was a 2-level lead over in the duo lane. Feels great to have arguably, or maybe not even arguably, Taco, the best hunter in the game at the moment, a couple levels up over who is usually that second answer here in the ROM. Feels like, though, and maybe both hunters indicated by their builds here, starting to stray away a little bit from the standard full-on bow rush. I'll return to that thought here after the mid lane fight happens. My goodness, Sarpei melts Sap's health bar with the drop kick there. Cherio over into the mid lane, throws out the pin, but gets stunned up by Emilzy. Unfortunate for this Morgan. 0-2 now, 9.5 minutes in.
That is a good night instance, though, for Sap. I was not anticipating that dropkick to do quite literally what felt like 75% of his HP bar. Just well played there to Sarpei. Takes full advantage of the fact that Sap's Purification Beads were still on cooldown from when he got picked earlier on near those left mid Harpies, and if Pandamonium can keep applying pressure onto the mid lane, that's certainly going to cause some struggles here for Cherio, because usually it's the other way around. Usually it's the Erlong being the first one to kind of look for the initiations, but Sarpei understanding, hey, I've got a power spike already, I've got the Jotuns online, I'm just going to spam my Winds of Shamash as often as possible in the mid lane and make life hell for Sap.
So it feels like mid plus jungle and maybe even support, while not wildly discrepant in XP, feeling just the pressure is felt there for Pandamonium, whereas E-Chrome still has that 1-level lead over Streak Up on the left side of the map. And you know, a lot of this is still theory crafting, but I'll return to my previous thought there before the fight in the mid lane. Normally on Artemis or even ROM, it's what, Icavale, Oboe, Silver Branch at some point, Abo there towards the end. Feels like over the last couple weeks that we've seen Icavale still first. I think you have to do it first and foremost. But then something in that Aussie, Xe, kin size tree tends to be that second pickup.
Actually a pretty big fan of the Aussie second item, and I think that right now, as far as the competitive meta is concerned, that's always going to be a little bit varied in the build pathways, but we'll hold that thought for later on, because Emilzy's going to get pulled in by that 9 turns blessing, but a quick Riptide to get him out of dodge, and just like that, the fight is all but dissipated, because Team Joystick, they see 4 members from Pandamonium, and that Scorpion is all theirs. E-Chrome, on the other hand, he's trying to utilize all that attention being shifted towards solo side of the map to take this 1v1 up against Streak Up, but Streak Up playing it smart. He's looking for the team fight instances, because ever since that, it takes 1 death and you're 2 levels behind. And now Streak Up is basically combined for his T1 tower line, but love the way he's trying to play his positioning, understands that he's just going to have to forfeit some early farm.
Oh, man.
And that is an unfortunate timing on the Astral Barrage. Won't even really get to do any sort of deeps, but a great punish from Pandamonium to take that Pyromancer. However, it leaves this Gold Fury completely exposed, especially since Streak Up just used that Astral Barrage for the purple buff attempt.
Yeah, so we're on a knife edge here as Pandamonium takes the Pyro, Team Joystick takes the Gold Fury. Streak Up trying to secure his purple buff, unable to do so. So Streak Up has the only ultimate that is down at the moment, aside from Cherio, who's still coming back up. A great Riptide sends Calvin right back towards Pandamonium, but the damage is there from Joshi, and the second kill of the game finds its way into the back pocket of this soul that has now got a couple stacks building up on that Charon's Coin, Spear of the Magus, second overall, and we're starting to see why this soul has been valued.
Listen, Team Joystick, they had numbers there, but I think Pandamonium just recognized the fact that Ikram not having any mana means that Calvin is completely exposed here. Now Cheerio possibly going to be punished for a little bit of a over-aggression here, trying to invade Pandemonium's red buff. He's on the run, but Riptide, Sarpei going to jump in as well, and Emilzy still trying to give chase.
Oh, that's a beautiful Riptide yet again. And unfortunate on that pin from Cheerio. It was just shy of catching out the chasers there for Pandemonium. And so another kill for Joshi. My goodness, these kills, not that Joshi isn't doing well, because he is. But these kills have just been spoon-fed over to Joshi, haven't they? Emilzy's having a fantastic game on this Yemoja, and it's really the mid laner that's better off for it.
You can never count out Emilzy, and I think Yemoja in general probably one of the most annoying gods to try and get away from, because it's not like Cheerio is slow by any means. I mean, he even forfeited that 72 transformation for the Mink form. He was trying to get out. He had no intentions of sticking around after being spotted by Sarpei on that red buff invade, but the Wingblade, no benefits. I love the utilization there from Emilzy not to apply any sort of slow potential, because had he done even the slightest bit, I think Cheerio gets out there every single time, but it's the recognition of what proper ability usage needs to be applied when that I think can kind of be attested towards some of that more veteran experience there from Emilzy.
And Emilzy is playing backup for Streak Up right now, because it is still about a 1.5 level lead for Ikram, so that's something we're going to have to keep our eyes on as this game goes on. Been quiet, though, on the flip side from Calvin on this Bacchus, but it's not like Bacchus gets worse as the game goes on. Kind of the opposite. You feel like maybe later on in the game, this guy is going to be super tanky and difficult to deal with. So this is not a situation, Taco, where Team Joystick need to feel out of things. That they're about 1,000 gold, if that, maybe 600 or 700 gold behind, despite this big 3-kill lead for Team Joystick. And maybe some of that gold lead is shrunk down because of how Ikram is over Streak Up, and still not going full on bow, by the way. Ikavale into Aussie, into Exy. And so that might continue here for Ikram, able to push that advantage.
And for Streak Up, he could look for either the Silver Branch or look for the Atalantis here, I think. Or either one would be solid. Both give 10% penetration, although might argue that there might be a better case here for the Silver Branch just because it plays into that second ability, the attack speed steroids, so well with Pandemonium. They're done sitting around idly. They want this gold lead to start expanding now, putting some pressure underneath the T1 tower. Calvin's going to be able to belch them off for the time being, but Pandemonium, they've got to be careful not to overstay their welcome. Mogyal already toying with the idea of possibly rotating in. Meanwhile, Ikram, he's looking to seize this T1 tower for himself as well, pushing out Streak Up from the lane with the full creep wave. He's going to get some great poke pressure onto this tower, if not take it.
Yeah, I think he would be able to take it, get some good damage on a Streak Up, but both hunters with Aussie able to get some of that lifesteal that this build might otherwise not have. Astral Barrage is there, beads are there, rollout is there, but Streak Up won't have to use them this time. But a stiff breeze, as we like to say, onto the Tier 1 tower and left will knock that down. Emilzy has been the spearhead, the lightning rod of pressure here for this Pandemonium team, so everywhere the Yemoja goes, you just imagine that some type of action is going to follow. And so maybe we see that brewing here. Just about a minute until the Oni Fury respawns, so on the left side of the map things could be quiet. Pyromancer just a little bit ahead of that. But I'm glad you mentioned the Cthulhu a minute ago. I forgot there was a solo lane in this matchup because we haven't seen them involved at all. There's an Osiris that's level 17, a Cthulhu that's level 17. Their builds look quite different from one another as far as individual items. And Lamogo has that Frenzy in the back pocket as well, and Hada the Urchin might tell you that he's looking to fight.
Well, listen, Nave, we've been seeing it time and time again, even at the SPL level. It's not really a surprise to see it here now in the Smite Challenger circuit, but teams just prioritizing the farm more than anything else. Yes, you might see skirmishes here and there surrounding mid and some of these jungle buff invades, but with such even compositions, I think that's the main storyline here between these two teams, is that I think both of these drafts are outstanding from either side. It really just boils down to who happens to have the better execution, and so far I would argue that Pandemonium have had a slight edge with Emilzy on this Yemoja. The Rivers Rebukes and the Riptides have been so impactful at favoring Pandemonium for these picks. I mean, they even just take another Gold Fury for their name. Granted, they got the Pyromancer last time. It was Team Joystick that actually had the Fury, but taking objectives outright like that before Team Joystick even really have a chance to full-on group and respond, and then everybody gets to walk away for free. That is best case scenario every single time you're Pandemonium, and kind of gives us some insight towards how much shred capability there really is between this Gilgamesh Soul and Rom.
Calvin drop kicked now by Sarpei. Here comes the chase down that Pandemonium got plenty of.
Oh.
Riptide the wrong direction this time from Emilzy. That's okay. You don't want to chase out too much onto Calvin this time. But you're right, though. You know, last time it was Pyro for Fury, and that felt kind of okay. Watch out, though. Mogao around the backside. Dashes on through. Has his ultimate. Frenzy gets used. Ultimate gets used as well. Sap stealths for the time being. Still has the ultimate on the Morgan, but Mogao drops back down to standard size and uses both of his relics. So the fight potential for this Cthulhu maybe a bit limited for the next couple of minutes.
This is a prime scenario now for Pandemonium, though. They just got Cthulhu over free. They get the Frenzy for free. Cheerio had to back off, and Pandemonium, sure enough, they were going to punish Team Joystick for, I think, what it looked like a split decision there from Team Joystick, because Mogao, he was gung-ho. He was ready to get the fight started, but everyone else on his team was just like, hey, man, slow it down for a sec. We're not prepared for this. Cheerio's already at half HP. Not sure this is the engagement we want to take. Yep. But losing those cooldowns, and I think that they are key cooldowns for Team Joystick as far as the team fight is concerned. Plus, they didn't have E-Chrome there for any sort of real kind of follow-up. So I think that Pandemonium just taking advantage of a little bit of an oversight there from Mogao. And Team Joystick have got to be careful that that doesn't happen around some of the more big objectives like this Fire Giant.
Yep, so the largest swing we've had so far in this game is about 2,000 gold, and that's just happened with objectives quietly being taken away by Pandemonium. It was a quiet gold, or quiet Oni Fury, a quiet Pyromancer. And so they're still building up that strength. First person in the game to reach level 20, I believe, was E-Chrome just a moment ago. Has already upgraded that starter item, so a decent power spike there. That streak up has not been able to afford, just went back, bought the Light Blade, still hasn't reached level 20 anyway, but Kana is right there, and so is Mogao, so we're starting to tick over to those big power spikes here over the last couple of minutes. Kana also able to upgrade that starter item, and so we haven't really seen, I think, one of two things here, Taco. Joshi at 3-0-1 with Magus and now Typhon's Fang. We haven't seen his big power in a big team fight, or E-Chrome, and we might get a chance to do that here as Fire Giant being whittled away. Cheerio throws the pin over the wall, but it is another quiet objective, and Team Joystick not able to respond. These teams are allergic to fighting.
Oh my God.
That's all I can think. Cheerio's going to get run down here by Kana. Unfortunate. Mogao just short of getting the root on that Osiris, and so it's Fire Giant plus 45-second death timer on Cheerio for Pandemonium.
Kana does not care about T2 towers at this point in time. He has got so many protections built up. Not only that, but the sustain as well from Emilzy, and these objectives are just melting here. Joystick kind of just, I wouldn't say they were asleep at the wheel by any means, Dolson, but it really doesn't seem as though they had any sort of indication that that Gold Fury or Fire Giant was going down. Now Sap just dead to rights here. Sarpei, Kana making it happen.
Taka, we have not seen one true team fight, and might be a kill traded out here as Mogao chases down Sarpei, but the blink comes back up in time. It has been 7 individual picks for Pandemonium throughout the course of this game, and that has netted a Fury, a couple Pyromancers, a Fire Giant, a right side Phoenix, and it's all off of individual picks that have happened. Team Joystick haven't been able to group up and fight back in just yet, and this is, I don't want to say backbreaking, but it kind of feels that way. You had 40 seconds on your Cthulhu, 15 seconds on Sap to come back from base. Another couple of towers of gold for Pandemonium to get up here. This is a massive swing here in this game, and Pandemonium starting to run away with it.
Well, I don't want to call it over-aggression by any means for Mogao, but maybe a little bit of frustration spilling out there from the Cthulhu, because you literally watch Sarpei not only just outright run down your mid laner, watch him forfeit his beads, his Aegis, and still die. And then Sarpei literally runs through your base and escapes. I can understand where Mogao wanted to stick to that commitment, but nobody else from Team Joystick seemed as though they were willing to participate. Nobody, I don't think, even was in the area to respond alongside of Mogao when he invested for that Cthulhu ultimate and run down attempt against Sarpei. But Pandamonium, I think that this has just been so beautifully executed for them in their composition. And Serpe, he's got to be careful. Seems as though Joystick taking a little bit of note of where he's at, but have to remember, Pandamonium split one of the Smite Challenger Circuit. They were the only team, I would say, that actually took it to Elysium and were managing to actually seem as though they had a chance to beat them. So
yeah, it's a hard team to beat.
I think it's interesting now to see the Pandamonium kind of just taking over here. Joystick's up 2-0.
Yeah, left side Phoenix taken down. Rivers rebuke from Emilzy separates out this fight. Here's your double Cthulhu's, but it's quickly going to become one as Streak Up is run down. Sap Cherio finally gets a kill on the board here for Team Joystick, and it's Sarpe. That Gilgamesh has been massive for Pandamonium, and it'll have to be out of the fight for the next 50 seconds. Lamogao still big. D transforms, and look at the damage. This Rom is pouring into the front line. He's killed off 2 Cthulhu's in this fight. Could be another frontliner going down, and Pandamonium are routing Team Joystick.
Streak Up is just melting everyone. That Silver Branch passive ticking over to 69 when he's in that stand. Multiply that by 2, Dolson. I'm not the greatest at quick math.
138.
That is an absurd amount of power for a Hunter to have available to him on his autos. And yes, this Titan, much like the entirety of the map and most of Team Joystick's members, whenever they ran up into Pandamonium, melted.
Taco, I think the final Phoenix fight there was as close as we got to like an actual full-on team fight throughout that game. It just felt like time and time again, Pandamonium found these 1 kill here, 1 kill there, and were able to push that lead. But it wasn't even so much that case. It was the Oni Fury, and then the Pyromancer, and then a Fire Giant that just went silently. And then the game just kind of spirals into madness,
We can talk a little bit more
right.
on it in a sec, I think.
Yeah, I think we can wait and discuss this a little bit further right after this break. Stick around. We'll be back to discuss game number 1. Welcome back, everybody, to Pandamonium versus Team Joystick. We're going to discuss the end of game number 1 there, and then we'll move on to game number 2 here in just a little bit. As Taco and I were talking about, as that game ended, it felt like through the first large portion of that game, it was a Mulesy running down individual targets, and there was a quiet sweep of all the neutral objectives on the map. And then Pandamonium just kind of ran down individual members of Team Joystick, and Taco, that's kind of all they needed to end the game.
Yeah, 20 minutes hit, and suddenly Team Joystick, they just did not get the memo that Pandamonium were ready to just close it all out, because Pandamonium, they just moved. It was clinical, really. They moved from one objective to the next. They didn't really hesitate in their shot calling. They also, I think, Emilzy, the River's Rebuke, again, comes heavily into mention here, because he just cut the likes of Team Joystick off from the 1 or 2 individuals that were readily available to try and contest, and it was largely just Cheerio or Mogao, but it really just felt like Team Joystick were simply not prepared for this immediate surge of aggression from Pandamonium.
It was a sudden turnaround. I have to imagine it feels bad for E-Chrome, because that lane felt so easy for the Artemis after everyone left. It was a 1.5, 2-level lead. We never got to see that full pressure. The Artemis is going to be pretty high on the damage charts. A lot of that done in lane. Whereas on the flip side, Streak Up, who was largely pushed against his tower in that wave, poured out massive damage numbers in that final fight. At 4-1-0, I think Streak Up got 3 of his 4 kills in that final little base fight there, and probably the larger portion of his damage done in this game. E-Chrome did near 12,000. Kana put together a decent damage number there as well. But Sarpei at 7.5k damage. I don't know if that does the amount of damage that Gilgamesh was doing justice.
For how much fighting.
Right. For how much fighting, right. I think it's all relative. Some of those drop kicks and things that we saw earlier on in the game were like half-healthing, 75% healthing the carries. And that's not easy to do. At the SCC level, out-jungling, what felt like out-jungling Cheerio a little bit. Cheerio didn't have the best of opportunities, it didn't feel like this game, but the Gilgamesh, definitely something that needs to be looked at in picks and bans for game number 2. We'll see who's first, who's second. Team Joystick is first. Pandamonium over in that second spot. Are you giving Sarpei Gilgamesh again in this game if you're Team Joystick, or are you going to take it away? I
don't think it would be in Joystick's best intentions to let that Gilgamesh go through one more time. It seems already the Osiris going to be stripped away. Kana having simply, I wouldn't even call it like pressure, but the main thing that I notice is Pandamonium, they recognize the fact that Joystick's dual lane was ahead. They recognize the fact that E-Chrome had an advantage in the direct matchup in general with the Artemis versus Rom, but they just avoided dual lane entirely. Emilzy was like, listen, man, you're going to fend for yourself. If you die, you die, but some of you will die, a.k.a. you're just going to have to forfeit your life sometimes, Streak Up, for the greater good, and the greater good being Pandamonium. They just played everywhere else instead. And Rom was purely there as an objective shredder.
That was very Lord Farquaad of you.
Yes.
Some of you will die.
AKA Streak Up.
But that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Pandemonium were ready for it.
They were ready for it. That was very Lord Farquaad in Shrek, and I appreciate that. I don't know if that was intentional.
I did watch it like 2 days ago.
Did you?
So that might have something to do with
it.
It's just like sitting in my brain, you know?
That makes total sense. No, but it's very apt and very, very correct for the game that we just watched. All right, so Heimdall was banned out in game 1. Not banned out here in game number 2, and it's going to be first pick priority for Team Joystick, and then a carry of the different variety prioritized now by Pandamonium is Morgan Le Fay is picked up for mid lane, not support, but then the support is locked in as well. That's going to be Fafnir.
No, it's going to be Morgan Le Fay support, actually, and Fafnir in the
I
solo
don't
lane.
believe you.
That's fair enough, but a lot of some switch-ups, I think, taking place here, because Athena was also banned away by Pandamonium in that 4th, 5th period, so Joystick putting a little bit more priority towards this god pick. And have to remember, when you have Cheerio on the team, I don't think it's a clear-cut indicator that this Athena is going to be purely intended for that support role. I think we might be looking at a jungle Athena here, Dolson, and especially with that Cthulhu, that's seeming like a run back here for Mogao. But the Artemis versus Heimdall, I actually think Pandamonium have a slight edge here in the draft so far. It really just hinges on how well Joystick are able to utilize some of that global pressure from the Athena, but as far as direct matchups are concerned, I think that Artemis can be very aggressive into the Heimdall, and of course with the Fafnir right behind her, you would have to expect maybe a little bit more aggression here from Pandemonium's dual lane, but also the Morgan Le Fay, knock up, fear. Those are essential tools for preventing any sort of Guardian initiation against you, like that of Athena and Cthulhu.
And so I think now that you've mentioned the Cthulhu being picked here for Team Joystick, it makes sense that we see Pandemonium take the Morgan away. While it wasn't an issue really for Pandemonium in Game 1, double Cthulhu still is terrifying in thought, in principle. So I think Morgan probably a good ban there for Pandemonium. Pandemonium then grabbed themselves a Hercules, and we have started to see a little bit more Hercules Taco out of that solo lane. It's just kind of a pressure bot, right? I mean, early on in the game, you can sort of swing away here, especially onto Cthulhu. I mean, what do you think there in that matchup?
Joystick
versus Cthulhu.
I think Joystick were a little bit more preoccupied with just trying to do direct jungle bans up against Sarpei, and so they went for the Erlong. They take away the call lead. They don't want to let these too many knockups go the way of Pandemonium. Then they still have to deal with Earthbreaker in the process, but having banned Hercules, or excuse me, Gilgamesh and the Osiris, it doesn't really surprise me that Kana's still going to look for that pressure pick like the Hercules. And a set to kind of round things out here, seeing a whole lot of dive and shred one more time from Pandemonium. Meanwhile, Joystick, I think that their power spike a little bit more geared towards that mid-late game.
Loki here is such an interesting pick as well. I mean, for Cherio, maybe not so
yeah, it eliminates the jungle Athena
oh yeah, it's
idea.
a good point. Let's return to that. No, it's yeah, so it won't be jungle Athena here. It'll be, unless it's Loki support, Taco.
I don't know.
How excited are you about Loki support?
I haven't.
Rate it.
I have not had to see Loki support since Smite console days with Brochacho, and
so it's a thing that's been played before.
I think it's worth leaving in the past.
Got it. We will leave Loki support in the past. I would much prefer an Athena on my side there as well. Look, good front line, you feel like, for Team Joystick here between an Athena and a Cthulhu. That's going to be difficult to deal with. But Pandemonium don't have a front line to scoff at either. But between the initiation of and tankiness and some sustainability of the Hercules and the coerce and the engage, maybe limited, but engage potential of that Fafnir, things could be interesting here in game number 2 between Pandemonium and Team Joystick. Team Joystick, they got to bounce back after a game 1 where they were not able to get much done. It's a full 5 on grouping for Pandemonium here, but that won't result in all that much. Let's talk about these front lines though a little bit, Taco. Cthulhu and Athena. As Calvin is on a ward, I'm not going to give you a chance to talk about it. Calvin drops the ward and dashes away. Versus Hercules and Fafnir. What's on your mind when you see those 4 frontliners here in this game?
Pandemonium, if they are able to do what they did in game 1, it seems like they're just intending solely to replicate exactly what they did in game 1, just with a slightly different composition. But the message is still the same. It's just barrel run down and just chase after Team Joystick and these heavy pick opportunities. And I like Cthulhu, I like Athena, and obviously there's definitely going to be some strong opportunities to play off of the taunts and whatnot, but I would probably give a slight edge to Pandemonium's front line purely because of the fact that I think Fafnir and Hercules are going to have a much easier time at applying damage and pressure. Meanwhile, I think it's really only Mogal that could potentially throw some DPS the way of Pandemonium. Yep. I think that Athena can certainly struggle in that regard. Yeah,
you think Lamoga is going to have a tough time. He's already beneath half HP in that lane, and we've just reached level 2. Warding Sigil picked up for the Cthulhu again. Not that it really helped Lamoga there in team fights, at least, in game number 1, but might help in lane up against the Hercules that is going to be pouring out a lot of damage. Already only 1 pot left on that health chalice, so that's tough. Joshy's taking a lot of damage here, but so has Cherio. So Sarpei a little bit healthier off here. What do you expect in the jungle matchup, though? Because Set versus Loki, admittedly, Taco, is not something we see all that often at the SPL level, something a little bit different there in that regard. But sure is going to be fun to watch.
A nice steal, by the way, from Streak Up on that Artemis that's suppressing the Insolent. Able to get the last hit on the Harpy that Ikram and Calvin have been chipping away at. But Loki versus Set, I think it just purely depends on, can Cherio blow someone up outright or set Sap up more importantly, for the chance to have the Baba Yaga follow-up damage to kind of just burst them down. It's just, Sarpé, I think, is going to be primarily looking to just wait it out. And that's the threat that I think he poses against Cheerio, because if Cheerio does commit with the Loki, the moment he goes into that assassinate, I think we're going to see Sarpé just instantly look for the turn and burn.
Well, that's a dash in and a taunt from Calvin, but then a great trap from Streak Up keeps Calvin right there in place. E-Chrome, though, a steady lead here. Reach level 2 first, and pressure has been pushing against Emilzy and Streak Up since then. Cheerio has no mana. So unfortunately, Pandamonium are going to be able to invade this blue buff on the right side. Not surprising, given the way that Kana's been playing this lane so far. That a little bit of pressure gets ceded over to Pandamonium against Team Joystick. But look at this. Cheerio not going to go on back. Instead, he's going to invade the speed buff of Pandamonium. It invades all around, and looks like only one of them is going to be successful, and Cheerio will indeed pick up that speed and then his own there on the other end.
Sarpé's definitely going to be a little sad by the time he backs to base and realizes that he missed out on that one. So, Mogao, sad, but I think Sarpé being sad is more important. And not only that, I think that it's interesting that Cheerio wanted to run the Loki here, Dave, because after what happened in Game 1, where Pandamonium just basically imploded the map with pressure right around that 19-20 minute mark. Oh, hold that thought, though. Streak Up could be in some danger here, but it's going to be a Bifrost away from E-Chrome into the safety of his T1 tower. Good shred already coming through from these dual lanes, but getting back to that original point, you know that Pandamonium aren't going to really be looking to prioritize playing out of the dual lane, at least not if you pay attention to what happened in Game 1. So with that in mind, I guess it just seems a little bit weird that Joystick would take such a low-pressure jungle to pair alongside of this solo lane, because Cthulhu he's not going to fare too well in the 1v1 against Kana.
Streak Up gets his back stopped, and this is a really bad spot for Streak Up. Taunt in from Calvin there, but Streak Up walks away, has to use his beads. E-Chrome used the beads a little bit earlier on. And so different starts over in the dual lane as well. Cal on one side, Destol on the other. E-Chrome going into a bit of a different build as well. Looks like what could be a Transcendence there for E-Chrome. We haven't seen that start in a little while. Let's see if the Oracle gets stolen away here. Big battle over the Oracle, and Cheerio confirms both of them. And a different start in the mid lane. There's some unique builds being put into the game right now where no starter item, Charon's coin, full-on Charon's coin start for Joshi. And then E-Chrome goes with a different starter item, looking like a different build there in Hunter. Some unique builds coming out here in the first few minutes.
Unique is a strong word to use here, too, because Sap, we're so familiar with seeing the Warlock staff first
and a book
on the Baba Yaga. Instead, it's going to be the Book of Thoth, but again, stacks are what Baba Yaga does best. That passive definitely going to help build those 100 in no time whatsoever for the Book of Thoth, and having the Sands of Times availability as well, so definitely a lot of mana at Sap's disposal here, but again, just not entirely certain if a Team Joystick are going to be able to generate enough pressure to apply against Pandamonium in this early to mid game, where you actually see a little bit of a level advantage taking place here in the mid lane. I know Cheerio's slightly behind Sarpé, but it's really not by much.
Right.
And I guess what I'm getting at is I would definitely like to see some more aggression.
Stun onto Calvin. That's the boar from Streak Up. Athena ult used as well. And that'll close up that gap. Both Hunters still without their beads. E-Chrome's going to have those back up in 10 seconds. Streak Up 50 seconds. So that's there to look at. I wondered what Lemogao was building over there in the solo lane. The Strange builds continue. Strange not necessarily bad, just unique. There's a Chronos pendant for the Cthulhu there in the solo lane. And so that maybe relieves a little bit of pressure, some extra damage here. Sarpé hovering by the duo lane, but no purple buff to invade, no fight to be had, and instead he'll go to the Scorpion.
I think Mogao just wanted a little bit more damage in general to maybe try and prevent Kana from being able to be as free with looking towards these blue buff invades, because now Mogao can actually match the curve pressure in lane. In fact, he's even going to take full advantage of that, actually strip away that Totem of Coup for Team Joystick here, I believe. Well, it's tied up now, 2-2 between these two solo laners, and it's mostly just the team capabilities that you're looking for with that Coup, but more importantly, The Chronos Pendant just says, hey, Mogal's exposed, but at the same time, he is leaning pretty heavily into just the raw protections that this Cthulhu has.
Well, Taco, in game 1, and I'm going to pivot back to Echrome and then add in Cherio here. It was Icavale, and granted, it was a totally different pick for Cherio, but it was double Icavale in game 1. Double Transcendence here in game 2. Is the Transcendence build, maybe particularly for Echrome, as a Transcendence build on Hunter, something that you still have some confidence in, given the strength of Icavale first item?
I do think it's a bit odd to look for a Transcendence because he basically just defaulted immediate 1v1 pressure towards Streak Up. So now Echrome, but I think the matchup in general, maybe Echrome just felt like, listen, I'm Heimdall against Artemis. I'm not going to have pressure here regardless as far as 1v1s are concerned.
Oh, wow.
Mogal, though, doing some great damage to Sarpei. He's actually going to force this set out of the fight.
Well, what's happened over on the left side? Streak Up's gotten taken down here, and it's Cherio who swings for first blood. And the Chronos Pendant doing a little bit of work there in the solo lane. Cherio uses his ultimate to disengage. And 1v1 potential, yes, Taco. Unfortunately, when you are being collapsed on by 3 members of Team Joystick, the Icavale advantage not enough to save Streak Up there. So first blood ends up going to Team Joystick and Cherio more specifically. And so he's able to find his first target. And a great start now for this Loki.
Also gets the purification beads in the process, so a nice, I think, takeaway here from Joystick. They recognize that Pandamonium is going ham on Mogal, so Cherio just catches Streak Up out a little bit too pushed up here, looking for that 1v1 aggression up against Echrome and punished for it accordingly. Have to remember that lack of mobility, even with the steroid giving you some movement speed there for Artemis, still not going to be enough. And Streak Up, he's under pressure yet again.
Oh no, is it going to happen again? He does not have the bore. Only one more auto would have gotten it done from Echrome there, but it won't connect. I want to see how Streak Up's going to play this now because he does not have any potions. Sarpei is close by. Cherio doesn't have his ultimate. Streak Up's got to realize that it's close, and so he'll channel his back once Sarpei gets back into lane here. And Sarpei engages onto Calvin, fighting the mid lane as well. Joshi has got some self-peel, the ultimate from range, and it's good. And Morgan Le Fay on the board. Sarpei is as well. That was a 2v1, and Streak Up never left. Streak Up stuck around. And it's a double kill for the set over in the mid lane. A kill gets traded back as well, and chaos all across the map. But ends up being a 1 for 3. If you take that entire, that's not a minute, I don't know, 30 seconds or so into account.
It is very difficult to try and out-trade Set when he's in the Kingslayer. Sap could be in some trouble here as well from Emilzy, but not going to get hit out with the hammer. I don't even think Emilzy might not have had it on cooldown. Still, nice that Sap was able to survive there, but Streak Up, he got raw sustain just off that little bit of lifesteal, I think, from the Cal. Gave him enough to push up, but more importantly, it was really just for the Caledonian Boar. That's all that Streak Up was after as far as participation points are concerned there for Sarpei. Just creating space, essentially, for that set to get in with that Kingslayer ultimate, and certainly works out for the better here for Pandamonium, because Cherio started to get something going for Team Joystick, and it is immediately shut down by Pandamonium.
What happened in the mid lane here? I mean, it was 1 kill for Sap, and a second ago it was a 3-level lead for this Baba Yaga, where Joshi was level 10 and Sap was level 13, so it's a 2-level lead now, not quite as bad, but still not great. It's kind of 1 to 2-level leads basically all over the map, and one of those big leads is now on this Baba Yaga, who's got a fully stacked Book of Thoth, a couple stacks in the Charon's coin, and looks like a little lifesteal is going to make its way into that build. So maybe this is an area, Taco, that Team Joystick can fight around, and it's the level advantage in mid.
The main difference being, I think, that Calvin, Cherio, they just have not been soaking as much of that mid farm as what we've seen Joshi having to split with his team. But 2-level lead or not, Joshi, the fact that he was able to find a 1v2 solo up against Cherio and Sap definitely puts a dampening on things, because now I think Sarpei a little bit more at an advantage here with this set up against the likes of that Loki, simply because he's got the Crusher online now as well. That boosted attack speed with no anti-heal on the board just here for Team Joystick is going to make Kingslayer even worse.
Oh my goodness. Sarpei did not have a chance to do anything. Beads were down, and so Echrome gets the kill. Now Cherio engages onto Emilzy, who has to leap away. This is all around a Gold Fury. And I wondered if Team Joystick would then try to push the jungle advantage onto the Gold Fury, but they will not. They'll take the 1 pick and they'll head on home. And so now another member of Team Joystick in the kill column, and it's Echrome.
I'd like to extend a formal apology there to Sarpe as well for the literal caster's curse.
Yeah, that was a bad one, too.
Gassing him up, talking about the fact that, hey, yeah, Kickslayer's going to be great now with Crusher. And
that was a bad one.
Just instantly dies.
And it was not particularly close.
No,
he got
taunted,
ulted, stunned, and he was gone. He was off the map. And maybe that's how you got to deal with.
He's got beads now, though.
He does have beads, right? They were like 15 seconds away or so, maybe 20 seconds away. Although in a moment like that, I don't know how much beads ends up doing for you. I mean, I guess, buys you some time. Maybe you can teleport out, things like that. Doesn't matter, though. Didn't have beads, does now. Still not all that far behind. That's about a 700 gold swing here, so Team Joystick just a little bit ahead of Pandamonium. It's really this Gold Fury. If there is a fight around this Gold Fury where this early game could change around. Emilzy walking forward here. Echrome has his beads. So Echrome and Calvin will back away, not knowing how many members of Pandamonium are close by, and you don't want to risk the Gold Fury.
I'm really liking the item utilization, though, from both of these supports so far. Calvin recognizing, okay, you've got a Fafnir on top of the Set and Artemis. I'm going to prioritize the Witchblade here. So a little bit of cooldown reduction, and more importantly, a lot of... It's just the slows for the attack speed in general. That AoE slow that's going to be, I think, crucial for Joystick in these team fight moments if they're able to generate some team fights. Granted, given what happened in Game 1, it is up in the air a little bit still. But Emilzy, the immediate response to just rush the Shoguns because of that. I don't know if it was purely because of the Witchblade or just, maybe he just likes running the Shoguns in general for Fafnir because it plays so well into Sarpe and Streak Up, just from the passive alone, but it does negate, I think, a little bit of that Witchblade passive in the process. So probably still favoring the coerced pressure that this Fafnir is going to be able to provide.
Let's see what happens here. Streak Up will not attempt to save his own purple buff. Momogao actually uses his ultimate here as Kana had walked just a bit forward. So there's an opportunity for some pressure around this blue buff now. Momogao's ultimate is down. Sarpe is here. Emilzy is as well. Cherio will quickly take down that blue buff. Does Sarpe try to chase this down, though? It's difficult to chase a Loki. Cherio's going to use the ultimate, and Calvin uses the ult as well. So maybe this is worth for Sarpe if he's able to survive, and he is. And so 3 ults down just through pressure of Pandamonium.
And now Sap seems like he wants to join the fight. Sarpe is just gone. No chance to survivability. That Witchcraft just blowing him up, and Kana could be the same fate. Going to get taunted back in to all this DPS. Excavate used in the process, but it's not enough. Mogao gets credit for that one, and Pandamonium seemed as though they're about to start having this edge, but Team Joystick just reminding Pandamonium, hey, this isn't Game 1 anymore. We've got damage of our own, and we're looking at team fight for real this time. And now, I think that Pandamonium, they've got to be on the lookout because I think at worst they lose a Gold Fury here. But Team Joystick have already sent a message that the burst is real with this Baba Yaga.
That feels bad for Pandamonium. They get a few ults down just by sheer pressure. Not unable to do anything with it. Gold Fury started up by Team Joystick, but they back away. Cherio is coming back from base right around the green buff right now. Pandamonium restarts the Gold Fury, but Team Joystick close by. Level 17 on Sap, level 14 on Joshi, so still a 3-level difference over in the mid lane. And I think this was always what was going to happen. When both teams showed up here, the Gold Fury gets reset. Cherio instead is going to re-engage onto Sarpe, who has taken a lot more than half of his health and damage at the start of this fight. And Team Joystick just making Pandamonium think twice about where in the jungle they step.
Joshi, though, he used that consuming power thinking that there was maybe going to be a little bit more after the fact there for Pandamonium to try and take advantage of. Instead, it's going to be Echrome ulting out to escape the Caledonian Boar. Unfortunate that he won't be able to send anyone to Niflheim anytime soon, but keeping those purification beads intact, I think, just takes priority right now, given that he's already got the 2-level lead. He doesn't really need to force an engagement when you already have the advantage.
So Streak Up goes Ikavale and Aussie, and it looks like Crit might be on the menu here for Streak Up. So we've seen some variety, Taco, in Hunter builds, and we wondered what Echrome would do with his build. Fully stacked Transcendence now, Aussie and Ikavale, so kind of backwards as far as order goes, but he ends up making his way to the power spike at the end of the day anyway.
Well, a Heimdall hits hard just regularly
Anyway,
speaking.
right.
And I know that Igful definitely plays into it with a little bit of that power potential as well, given that it stacks the power, you know, with every single auto attack that you succeed up to 3 times. But the concern here, not a whole lot of penetration.
Dash in from Calvin, and Emilzy, my goodness, takes a whole lot, transforms, leaps away. Frenzy gets used on the back end of this fight as Sarpei has attempted to get a kill on a Cherio here, but Cherio is able to back on off. Lamogao, he's big, but he's got 3 members of Pandamonium looking at him. He's able to roar and make his way back into safety. Kana re-taunted through here, and this Hercules has got to leave. Somehow everyone's alive. It's a nice stun on a Calvin to keep Kana alive, and that's Emilzy supplying that one. Pandamonium keep all 5 members alive, but you still feel, Taco, Team Joystick has the pressure.
Actually ridiculous how healthy Team Joystick are in comparison to Pandamonium, but there's no chance for the bag just yet. It's like they want to defend this Gold Fury, but they know after what just took place in that last engagement, Team Joystick's HP bar is a little bit more favorable here, so it will be their Gold Fury to collect despite no one dying in the process from what looked like was someone was pretty much guaranteed to death there. Most likely Pandamonium. The fact that Pandamonium all managed to survive despite how grim that outcome looked like it was about to be, I think that giving up Gold Fury is probably the best case scenario here for them, because had they actually wiped, I think that could have been a potential Fire Giant pool for Team Joystick instead.
Wow, Sap is absolutely massive here. He is level 19, the closest in the game. Behind that is 17. So level 20. And upgrading that starter item is going to be an afterthought for Sap by the time that Joshi is able to do the same thing. So the gap in the mid lane has continued to build up a little bit. Similar items, but Sap's got a couple extra ones. E-Chrome is able to get out. Oh, has to use the Aegis. Streak Up uses the ultimate. Not a total loss. You get the Aegis from E-Chrome, so that feels okay. You'll definitely have your ult back by the time the Aegis is back. But I think all eyes have got to be on this Baba Yaga. Fully stacked Thoth, fully stacked Charon's Coin, Soul Gem, and Soul Reaver. There is huge burst numbers coming out of the mid lane here for Joystick.
Given that game 1 was basically the Joshi show in mid, I think that Sap just wanted to get his in on the action, because he has been running it so far in game 2. Definitely been, I think, a highlight here for Team Joystick, and the way that they've been playing through this Baba Yaga as well, creating a lot of setup for her to follow up on between the Athena and the Cthulhu. Even Chariot with the Assassinate. You have to remember that stun lock in place. More than enough time for Sap to get to that burst damage channeled into the vicinity right after. So it's just a lot to deal with, I think, for Pandamonium. And I think this is where the conversation could start about, you know, not having that Yamoja that they did in game 1, because the self-sustain nowhere near as strong as what Pandemonium were able to use before.
Yeah, it's definitely a different look for Emilzy here this game. Not bad by any means. I mean, affected 2 out of the 3 kills, hasn't died on the Fafnir just yet, but you haven't felt that same pressure from the support role that you were feeling in game 1 for Pandamonium. So Sap does end up reaching level 20 far before anyone else in the game does, and a couple level 18s for Team Joystick as well. So over the next couple of minutes, XP still vastly matters and still going to be very important, because we're still early on in the game here, 20 minutes in. But it's all catch-up time now for Joshi. Level 17, going to close up that gap a little bit against Sap. So this Morgan Le Fay, definitely not out of things yet. Some power in that build, some damage in that build. And then a Sands of Time way later on. Starter item in name only, because it's going to be a 4th item pickup.
I wonder if he might be looking for the alternate timeline here with that Sands of Time.
Maybe.
Would be very frustrating. Imagine you finally get a chance to kill this Baba Yaga that's been absolutely brutalizing your team as far as burst damage is concerned, and then next thing you know, she's still alive. But Pendulum of Ages, definitely room for conversation there, I think, in general. But with that Soul Reaver now online, I mean, we thought that Kana, Sarpei, Emilzy were getting blown up before. Factor in what that Soul Reaver is going to introduce here for this Baba and Pandamonium. They have got to be careful.
Man, Cherio does as well. Cherio's been on a journey this game, affecting all 5 of the kills. Calvin just behind with 4 out of 5 assists on Team Joystick side. The Athena is just, we've talked about the difference between the Yamoja and the Fafnir, and how different that has felt. I think the difference between the Bacchus and the Athena is also pretty palpable, and that's a good thing for Team Joystick. Even as simple as just a few taunts have worked out for Calvin here this game. Couple of impactful ultimates down the stretch there as well. So Team Joystick find themselves a pretty decent amount in the lead here gold-wise, Taco. They're call it 5,500 gold in the lead. That was kind of the lead that Game 1 ended at. Then Team Joystick have it here far before this game is over. Pyromancer, Fire Giant, all that still to go, and Team Joystick are going to be the team feeling comfortable around it.
Gold, I'm much less concerned about than what I am the experience gaps that have taken place here. Largely looking at the dual lane specifically, because Streak Up, Joshy, I think could kind of make up for it just because mages are going to be able to do decent burst in general, but Streak Up is definitely missing out here with that trail behind, because Ikram, he's going to be able to get the starter upgrade going soon, and I wonder if he's going to choose that Death's Temper. I think that Death's Temper is kind of flew under the radar, but if you've ever read the passive of what Death's Temper does, the 10 stacks, the power capabilities behind it as well, especially when you have enough in-hand attack speed like what Ikram has opted for now. Aussie, Ickful, Executioner now online, so that pen introduction as well. There is a lot of burn potential here from Joystick.
Yeah, it's a great item whenever Ikram's able to get it. Oni Fury started up by Team Joystick. Could be a fight here around the corner. Emilzy jumps in. Frenzy gets used, and Emilzy has to transform. Joystick confirms the Fury. In the backline, Lamogau's been left alone, and I think that's his own doing, so it's Oni Fury for solo laner. But walking back through a whole heap of damage is Pandamonium. A one-man advantage on the map, Taco. And now a chance to kind of equalize out that Oni Fury loss with a Tier 1 tower.
Might not just be the Tier 1 tower at this rate, Dawson, because Mogao is out of the board for 40 seconds. On top of that, and Home Sweet Home having already been expended for sap means that Pandamonium, they're going to keep trying to charge down this mid lane.
Wow, lots of damage still finds its way onto Kana. And so the Hercules now has to back up a little bit. But look at the boar in the back line. That's going to open up the doors to Sarpei to go on in. Cherio's used his Aegis. Sarpei has done the same. Tier 2 tower falls down, and Pandamonium now hit the retreat button. Ikrom knocked on back here. And it looks like Pandamonium are going to be able to survive. Boulder just to secure that escape. Taunt was short, but watch out for Cherio around the left.
Now you've got to be careful, though, because Joshy's nearly got that consuming power ready to go yet again. Cherio, though, with the Assassinate, doesn't seem as if he wants to let Pandamonium get out for free here. Mogao has now respawned as well. Teleport available in 8 seconds, but not an upgraded TP, so he won't be able to immediately head towards the fire, but he will join the rest of Team Joystick here as they pull the objective now. Kana and Emilzy have spotted it out.
Yeah, great. Pandamonium got some gold, but a couple members of Pandamonium haven't been able to go back and spend it. FG is going slowly here. That's going to give Pandamonium a chance to walk on in. But they're off on the speed buff. Emilzy's now getting engaged on by Team Joystick. Will use his ultimate to transform. Keeps him in the fight a little bit longer, but how much longer is that? Not much, says Sap, who is now on a killing spree on this Baba Yaga. Dash in from Calvin and Streak Up in the eyes of Team Joystick now. Will walk away. Both actives used. Beads used this time. Aegis used a little bit earlier on. And so without Emilzy, can Pandamonium defend this FG? Streak
Up's almost got that Caledonian Boar online. Have to remember, Streak Up's the one with the Wind Demon. He's got Crit online, Atalantis Bow as well. One pick for the passive could be all it takes. Cheerio, meanwhile, going to keep Joshy preoccupied here, but this FG is still so slow to be shredded down here. Seems as though Pandamonium, though, they're willing to just give it up without Emilzy. They're just not feeling comfortable with the contest.
No, and luckily for Pandamonium, it is not 30 minutes into this game, so it's the regular old FG for Team Joystick. And there was a brief moment there after that Oni Fury where you're thinking, all right, Pandamonium, they get the Tier 1, they get the Tier 2. We have a chance now to bring this game back closer to even. We kind of just felt like Team Joystick were never going to let them back, never going to let them spend, and then stagger things out there around that FG. So plenty of towers still left on the map. Only 2 Tier 1s down on left and right, respectively. And so Team Joystick now can push that advantage for the next 3.5 minutes with this FG.
On the bright side, though, for Pandamonium, yes, they're likely going to have to give up a decent chunk of gold, which is going to help Team Joystick finish off some of those 5th, 6th items that they've got going right now. But more importantly, it's just the fact that this is not an enhanced Fire Giant. So still an opportunity, I think, for Pandamonium to try and look for that outright 5v5 engage. And if you notice, Joystick, kind of struggling without Mogao. And if they lose even one segment, I think, of this double Guardian front line, I think that it puts a lot of pressure onto the remaining frontliner in order to be a facilitator in terms of just looking for peel or looking for some initiation there. So Pandamonium, they might just be looking to play for a lone pick and then just collapse after that.
That's kind of how it felt around around the couple of towers at Pandemonium Siege. So lone pick, and then group around after that. So XP you mentioned as being a concern point. I think that matters not all that much now, as everyone except for the supports have reached level 20, and Emilzi's reached level 17, so able to upgrade that starter item. So gold's still definitely a factor in this game. Joshi still waiting for that final item, whereas Sap has a Rod of Tahuti, and so that feels good, but it is the starter item upgrade for Joshi, so that evens out that difference here just a little bit. But maybe for Pandemonium, these next few minutes, you know, closest as far as we've seen up to this point, because that XP gap is closed. You figure, you know, you let these these towers go quietly, Taco, but you kind of have to put up a fight under a Phoenix.
For sure, and I think that that fight is going to be a little better met if Streak Up's able to farm out the gold for this Silver Branch that he is now starting to work towards. And Silver Branch, I think, might be a little bit more critical here than just looking for that starter upgrade in general. While Cal is nice to get for the passive, getting that boosted attack speed around your teammates, it's much better felt when you have that Silver Branch passive already being utilized in the Artemis steroid. So if Streak was able to finish that one off, especially if he's able to find a crit, even with some Spectrals coming through, or a Spectral coming through for Team Joystick, still believe that those crits could be felt, and it's largely Cheerio, Sap, and Echrome that I'm keeping an eye out for here, because they would definitely be the most exposed as far as just getting outright RNG.
Yep. We wondered if it would be Death's Temper, if we're kind of continuing along with Streak Up and his build. You flip the script over there. Death's Embrace is what Echrome ends up picking up. Quick thoughts there, Taco, before this Phoenix fight. You think that's the right call?
I think Embrace pales in comparison to Death's Temper. That Death's Temper is so criminally underutilized, but
Frenzy
doesn't seem to matter here because Mogao, he's deep in the back line.
Oh, he is. Frenzy gets used here, and Streak Up does not have a chance. There's just a Cthulhu running him down. Pandemonium is going to have to win this fight elsewhere. Mogao finally gets the kill, but Emilzi does the same as well. This is not an easy fight for Team Joystick. Maybe a reinitiation in the mid lane. Cheerio pile drove against the wall here, and so the Loki now low in the mid. But you don't have your ADC to melt down these tanks. Joshi's going to have to get it done, and Sarpei's going to have to get it done, and Sarpei has done so in the meantime. Dodges out some burst damage from Sap on the right-hand side, and now Sap is going to get run down, still gets the kill. Aegis gets used to keep himself alive.
Not sure, though, that Blastoff's going to be enough to separate him from Kana. Kana still determined as ever to run this Baba Yaga down, throwing out as much delays as possible on Kana. He's going to think twice after eating some of that chunky mage damage. But you pointed it out before that chase even began, Dolson. It was the sacrifice that Joystick made in order to look for that pick onto Streak Up in general. So much given, and Echrome dying when he did just completely negated the benefit of eliminating Streak Up so early on.
Yep, Streak Up just got walked at by Mogao, and the rest of Pandemonium kind of regrouped elsewhere. And so no Phoenix goes down, and nobody on Team Joystick has an FG buff. It is so low that you do have to be worried about wave control if you're Pandemonium. But you're probably feeling okay after a fight like that. But that's always an interesting point, is how Pandemonium will respond now. Because you look at that Phoenix fight and you're like, all right, well, we defended well. How much do we really need to risk for this next FG? It is important, though, because it's enhanced.
I actually think that might have been worse there for Joystick, despite the fact that it seemed as though it might have been a little in their favor. Have to keep in mind, Streak Up just finished the Silver Branch.
Yep.
And I honestly believe if he'd had that Silver Branch online prior to that engagement taking place, Mogao actually dies there every time. Yep. But instead, he's able to stay alive just long enough to take the Artemis out of the engagement. But this enhanced Fire Giant, we saw the struggles that Joystick had with the regular Fire Giant in terms of burning it down. And for Pandamonium, I'm sure that they took note of that as well because they were aware that Joystick were on the objective before they took that first FG. It just took them forever to actually whittle it down. So I have to picture that this is basically a situation now where Joystick, they're essentially forced into winning a team fight before they can just pull the objective. But in comparison to Pandemonium, if they get 1, even 2 picks, or even just enough to force Joystick away, because of that Wind Demon online for Streakov, if he's alive, I think they just take that Fire Giant.
And that's all. You see a little bit of that as we take this pause here, where Pandemonium finally regroup and show face around the enhanced Fire Giant. And Team Joystick are again, as at the moment of the pause, kind of headed the other way. They don't, maybe feel entirely grouped up enough to fight. But they are going to fight indeed. Lemogao alone. Calvin closes that gap. Watch out for Streakup. That's the big target here. Still full HP on this Artemis. Whittling down the health bars of Calvin here. And Lemogao's ultimate is going to time out shortly. But look at Sap. Oh, the ultimate is massive. And he's got a whole lot of damage into Pandemonium. Looking like a game 3 around the corner. It's Kana against the world. And I don't think Kana's going to stand tall. Team Joystick and Sap are able to close this one out and send us to a game 3.
Who needs an EFG when you can just have a convincing Team 5 victory for yourself instead? And Pandemonium, probably, I think that this is where you're already in the team discussion about what you're going to do for game 3, because Kana, try as he may, not sure he's going to stand a chance here at delaying long enough. 4 members still relatively healthy here, but Kana, he's trying to make the miracle play happen.
It was onto Echrome, so some good damage finds its way in there. Unfortunately, the pull is not good enough. Kana still running forward, but the respawn timer's way too long here, and Team Joystick close out game number 2 against Pandemonium, and this one felt in Team Joystick's control from very early on here in this game. And I think Sap has got to be the MVP of that final fight there. That Baba Yaga ultimate, it was that kind of second wind in the fight here for Team Joystick, just completely flipped things around.
Now, remember how we talked about, well, actually, I'll wait until after the fact, because there's a lot to, I think, take away from what happened here in Game 2 and Game 3 right around the corner, but I'll let you do the next part.
That's right. We got a lot to break down here about game number 2 and a lot to set up for game number 3. Stick around. Team Joystick versus Pandemonium, game 3, up next.
Don't force me out of bed in your society. Don't push me down the road you're playing down. Don't try to fix my head, it's just your anxiety. Don't hush me now, cause I just wanna shout.
matchup this close in the standings deserved a Game 3, and a Game 3 we do have. And before we get to Game 3 talk, we got to talk about Game 2. And Taco, similar to how in Game number 1 it felt like Pandamonium was just kind of in control and pulling all the levers, really felt like Team Joystick here. It felt a little bit more comfortable, able to push that advantage, not without a little slip up around the Phoenix. Things got a little interesting there for a moment, opened that door just Pandamonium. But aside from that, Team Joystick, I don't know if they were ever really questioning their chances in this game.
Well, you remember after Game 1, Joystick, what did they immediately do? They banned the Osiris, they banned the Gilgamesh. And I think that we might see a very similar response here for Pandamonium with taking away that Athena. And you know Team Joystick now, they're willing to prioritize it from the get-go in their top 3, so probably have to visit that Athena ban a little bit sooner. Seemed as though it was just a little bit too favorable for Joystick in terms of how they were able to control more of that dual lane pressure. At least if they're going to throw Streak up onto the Artemis, he just needs some better disengagement measures, and what better disengagement measure than making sure that Athena's not there in the first place. And not only that, but possibly look at taking away Sap from this Baba Yaga.
That was good.
That experience lead that took place in mid, I'm still not even entirely certain how Sap managed to get away with that one, because it's not like there was a whole lot going on here. In fact, Joshi, again, he won the 1v2 up against Anterio and still found himself nearly 3 levels behind the entirety of the game. So I understand Calvin Cherio not showing as much presence in mid, giving him some of that advantage XP, but home sweet home, I mean, the damage speaks for itself.
My goodness, yeah, that was the highlight of the game for me there, where Sap at full health, and then literally just the mana that was used for a couple abilities and the ultimate was all that was missing from the health mana bar there. And Sap just kind of walks it down, 603. 30,000 damage in this one, and 21,000 was the next closest. So we'll make the numbers nice and pretty, a full 10K ahead of anyone else there on Pandamonium. It really did feel like Pandamonium just didn't have the answer to the Baba Yaga. It felt like there was just never any pressure pushing into the mid laner of Team Joystick, and it was just kind of free to operate in all those fights.
And I think another big difference was, again, the Osiris Gilgamesh. Those are characters where you can still get to the back line no matter what. But Sap, on the other hand, with the Baba Yaga, between the blast off and the home sweet home, it was just enough disengage for him to self-peel, and I don't think that a set alone was enough to cut the gap there.
Agreed. Taco, do you want to go to Game 3?
I think I want to see a Game 3 between these two teams. It's been pretty close so far.
Why not? Let's go to Game 3. Let's go to picks and bans for Game number 3. Let's start this one off and see who is going to be the big old winner. Remember, Team Joystick, if they win this one, for the time being, a standings advantage over Elysium and Pandamonium. If they win this one, they'll be tied for second with Team Joystick, though I think technically the head-to-head would bump them up in the tiebreaker there. That's a whole lot of fun stuff we don't have to worry about right now. Instead, we got to worry about picks and bans, unless you want to worry about it.
Well, I was going to touch on it briefly, just in the sense that I think it would apply a little bit of pressure there to Elysium.
That's
you know, they're regarded as the powerhouse team right now in the EU Smite Challenger circuit, but I don't think Snake Hunters, Joystick, Pandemonium, these teams are not that much further behind, if at all. And Snake Hunters might be a team, I think, that could possibly deliver.
There could be some interesting matchups afoot here in EU. Tiamat makes her way through into pick slot number 1 here. So Athena does get taken away, and I think that's worth mentioning here. Still a lot available. Cthulhu has just been ping-ponged around here in this matchup, and it's Team Joystick that get him this time. But Tiamat first pick there, Taco. A lot of weight connected with locking that pick in.
Cthulhu would certainly be a little bit more intimidating, I think, Dolson, if it wasn't for the fact that you already have such a great god on the side of Pandemonium in terms of shred potential. I mean, Tiamat, we've seen it time and time again, primordial onslaught on top of everything else. She is very problematic, and we're going to see Streak Up resort back to the ROM here. Didn't get to play it in game number 2, went for the Artemis. Don't remember if, I believe there might have been a ROM ban at some point, not entirely certain. Don't think so, actually.
I don't know if he did.
Don't think so, but seemed as though he prioritized the Artemis, but realized, hey, I'm getting dove way too often. Rather have the ROM here for myself again. And when you pair it alongside the colon, I think that there is just steady early, mid, and late game pressure now for Panda here.
And another Loki gets locked in. Cthulhu, Fafnir, Loki, that's not a first three to scoff at, I don't think, in this one. But how can I ever say that when there's a Tiamat, Rom, Kokoan on the other side? These two teams, I think, have been consistently drafting throughout now 2.6 picks in all of these drafts, or 2.6 games worth of drafts. Have picked themselves some really solid picks here. Chernobog, unfortunately, win rate doesn't indicate a super strong pick. 2 games played, 0 games won. Is Chernobog in a spot where you think he can battle it out with the Rom?
Chernobog has been hiding in the shadows, I think, in terms of how good he actually is. This character, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing him a lot more often here in response to some of these other hunter measures that we've been seeing teams go for, like Izanami, Artemis, Rom. He's got a fairly solid matchup, and not only that, but he gets a free Aegis in his kit with that Into Darkness, so could be difficult for the Rom now in the Astral Barrage to be able to apply as much consistent pressure, not to mention global aspect yet again here for Team Joystick. They did a fantastic job, I think, with the Athena in game number 2 for that leverage, and Chernobog certainly can accomplish some similarities there just in the presence. So I think buff invades might be happening a little bit sooner than what it has been so far this set.
And look, we're all for that. Let's pump some high octane fuel into game number 3 here. Discordia, a bit out of the conversation when it comes to mid lane tier list. Here's what everyone wants. It's been a lot of Tiamat, been a lot of Raijin, been a lot of Morgan Le Fay. Discordia is kind of a tried and true pick, but up against the Tiamat, admittedly, Taco, and this is my own just kind of tier list bias, it feels like Discordia kind of pales in comparison to the Tiamat.
At least as far as the 1v1 is concerned, but fortunately for Sap, he's got some other components here that I think can back him up nicely. Not only that, but when you look at Pandemonium's draft outright, Emilzi, Sarpei, Kana, these are all gods that I think operate in a little bit more of that melee-based range. So Strife and whatnot from Discordia becomes a little bit more crucial here, because the Unruly Magic as well for the follow-up off of that Strife. I think there's a chance for Pandemonium's draft to almost work against them in a sense. If they get too up close and personal there with the Discordia, not only would they eat a decent amount of damage from that combination that I just mentioned, but just being chain locked like that in general is pretty easy setup, I think, for Calvin and Cherio.
Yeah, agreed. And you know, if Sap is playing the way that he did there in game 2, definitely something to be concerned about if you're Pandemonium. So Joshi apparently just likes this start, where you don't go Star Right him into the tier 2 artifact there. It was Chronos Pendant last time. That's been a pretty popular plug-and-play for most mid laners here. And then Echrome on the other side also really likes this start, where we're going Destol into what looks like to be another Transcendence.
Hey, if we're talking off personal preferences alone, I'm almost certainly a huge proponent as far as the Vampiric Shroud conversation is concerned. But dual lane, I think this has been consistently the most aggressive aspect so far. But Sap, on the other hand, he's not on the Baba Yaga any longer, and already under heavy fire here from Sarpei and Joshi.
Yeah, early power there for Joshi, given his start. Echrome, a moment ago, did have to use the beads, and so Emilzi, with just one set of walls there that come crashing in onto Echrome, able to burn off the defensive relic. Another one finds its way in here. Now Echrome gets rolled into by Streak Up. It's a disarm and a shell used by Calvin here. Is it enough? That's the big question here. The root from Echrome says yes, but Emilzi's still chasing this one down. Nobody from Team Joystick on this side of the map to close that gap. Cherio, though, now was considering a rotation in. But my goodness, that is a long dual lane chase there from Pandemonium against Team Joystick.
That was some perfect peel, though, from Calvin. Had he not landed that hammer stun, and even some of the body blocks, I think, coming pretty heavily into play here, but it was really, it was a nice initiation, I think, from Pandemonium. They were trying to punish a little bit of that greed there from Echrome. It's pretty common for Chernobox to not have that Into Darkness leveled by level 2, oftentimes opting for the Crystallized Curses and Vicious Barrage clear combination instead. But now at level 3, Ikram might be the one willing to give chase.
What is all that? It was the secure onto the Scorpion, and then lots of damage into Streak Up. Sarpé around the backside of this fight here. Do Ikram and Calvin continue to push forward? Ikram kind of hesitating back here. And I think the sudden aggression from Emilzy and Streak Up gives clue that Sarpé is here, but Cherio is as well, and it's first blood to Ikram, and that one's just in the 2v2, but now Cherio makes it a 3v2 after Emilzy back to base and respawning, and I don't think there's going to be any more gap closed, but there is a purple buff, so both junglers make their way over in time, and Sap steals away the red buff as well. Everything coming up Team Joystick.
Total pain there for Joshi in the mid lane, losing out on his red buff experience to Sap. And not only that, but he knows that he couldn't even stick around if he wanted to. With Cherio having revealed himself over in dual lane, if Joshi tries to commit to anything, guaranteed rotation out of Cherio that would likely lead to another pick in favor of Team Joystick. So Pandamonium just being forced to forfeit the pressure, and this is not something that we've really been seeing so far in between these two teams. But Team Joystick may be riding a little bit of that momentum that came from Game 2.
Definitely. And Cherio, despite not getting anything for his efforts and showing up in the duo lane, does make an impact. It's the confidence impact that gave Ikram and Calvin the confidence to go back in, or excuse me, Ikram and Calvin to go back in, find the first blood. And that went on to Emilzy. So this is a bit of a different shift now for Emilzy, where throughout all of this lane so far, this Terra has just been putting out all of this pressure, all of this confidence-shaking play into Ikram and Calvin, and now there's first blood for Ikram, and whenever he goes back, maybe see this lane start to shift around here a little bit. Although, you know, the power curve, I think, of the Transcendence into Aussie, into Ichabel build, only really got one game on it so far, Taco. Did you like it enough? I know we talked about player preference. Do you have to wait a little bit longer to fight? What do you kind of look at in a build like that?
I don't think Ikram's really doing himself justice here, but based off the fact that he's just playing around his team in general, hey, whatever you feel confident with, I think that there are definitely favorable build pathways for Hunter players, but at the end of the day, I think that there's definitely more than one viable option, even at the competitive level. While Ickful is a heavy favoritism right now because of a passive and because of all the just early game pressure you can usually establish with it in a 1v1 situation, you have to remember, I haven't really been seeing any sort of real 1v1s between these two teams, so Ikram, I think, just trying to play for the mid to late.
Ikram now taking a 1v1. Streak Up has to roll away. There is an ultimate for Streak Up. Last couple of autos need to land here for Ikram. Up to the sky goes Streak Up. Yeah, some snipes are going to land, but is it really going to do all that much? Ikram says no. Streak Up then buys enough time to roll on out. One last auto! Come on, Ikram, but he's going to end up going down, and it's the trade over in the duo lane. Streak Up and Ikram trade out with one another. Cherio also died on the right side of the map, so Pandamonium able to pull back a couple of kills.
That 1v1 should not have been as close as it ended up being, though. Ikram, a little impatient, I think, launching off the Vicious Barrage in advance. Could have just held it, utilized it, waited for the roll from Streak Up, and then catch and kill him with that 1-2 combination off the Crystallized Curses Vicious Barrage. Instead, he'll trade out his life because he has to eat 2 extra tower shots more than what he should have. But either way, the message has still been sent. The fact that Ikram is able to make that play to begin with, I think, says a lot about what this Chernobog is capable of.
Yeah, not often you get the... And you know what? That was a caster's curse, but like in a good way. Just a moment before that, we're talking about how we don't see many 1v1s nowadays, and then Ikram and Streak Up decided to go toe-to-toe.
It does show the difference in viabilities, though.
Sure.
I know that Death's Toll has largely been written off by the general public, and I don't think it's been written off entirely at the pro level just yet. It's just that it's hard not to go for Cal because it is quite literally every single stat you could possibly want in an ADC.
Uh-oh.
Sap, on the other hand, wishing
goodbye.
that he had something else at his disposal here. Nice placement out of Emilzy.
Might need, not need, but you'd really like to get a kill on a Streak Up here if you're Team Joystick after what happened in the mid lane. But that's not going to happen, so Streak Up able to keep himself on the map there, just dodging out a little bit of the initiation from Calvin and Ikram, and we are literally dead even. 10 XP and 9 gold. Are you kidding me? We could not be more even.
Hey, red buff Terra, though.
You're right. Emilzy does have red buff. And so, you know, now you just got to run it down, right? By default, if you have red buff and your Terra, you got to run things down. Eats the hammer, and we'll capitalize and grab that greater Scorpion. So Emilzy, come on, now's the time to go. Let's fill up that tank and let's hit that gas pedal and get that red buff to work.
Emilzy playing for the greater good there knows. I mean, that's the one disadvantage, I think, of a Fafnir in comparison to some other supports when it comes to objective contention. If you just stand in front of him, he doesn't really have a chance to steal anything. So, Emilzy likely gonna keep trying to play body block absorption for Pandamonium around some of these objectives, but Echrome fully topped up. And Streak Up, I think he knows he's being hunted.
Oh, wow. Emilzy, red buff. Yeah, look, he's making it work. On to Calvin, who's going to leap over the wall here and transform. But there's a root awaiting him on the other side. Oh, but he leaps right back to the purple buff. And, yeah, these are all fancy feet moves here, but it doesn't matter all that much. Pandamonium able to get their 4th kill of the game. Cheerio is hovering close by, has ultimate. He could have closed that gap, but does not do so. And Emilzy still with the red buff, still chasing down Cheerio. But unfortunately, Cheerio has to leave. And I think talking about the Fafnir and kind of the one-note CC that it feels like that character has is maybe something we can then transition into a bigger conversation about Team Joystick's comp in general. Are you confident in the lockdown and the initiation that this Joystick draft has?
Definitely not as much as what they were able to bring in Game 2 with that Athena Cthulhu. Fafnir, I think, a lot more aggressive-oriented. You kind of need to be W-keying him down to really feel the benefits, I think, of this Fafnir, especially around objective play. But it's important to note that I think Terra just counters it so well. I mean, even in that last instance where Calvin got picked, he wasn't safe. He was guaranteed dead, I think, with the members that were there from Pandamonium. So for him to jump back into the purple buff, he was just looking to see if he could take the buff and at least remove that from the invade opportunity there out of Team Joystick, or excuse me, out of Pandamonium. But there's only so much to be done. Calvin on his own, unfortunately, even with the Draconic Transformation, not going to be enough to steal Streak Up's purple buff. So a little unfortunate there to trade out your life for essentially nothing. But definitely something to keep in mind, I guess, for Calvin later on, that, hey, I can't really afford to be the lone member looking for an initiation, because it's very easy, I think, for Pandamonium to just counteract it.
Ooh, it would be a 2v1 against Streak Up here, but Cheerio does not pull the trigger on the ultimate. Still might. Streak Up still here. Has the beads and the ultimate and the rollout. So Streak Up won't get dove on by Cheerio this time. After that solo kill we saw in the solo lane, or it was a kind of a duo kill maybe. Either way, Cheerio died to Kana is what I'm trying to say. That's now turned into about a 1.5 level lead for Kana over there on the right-hand side of the map. But we have literally not seen anything, it feels like, happening on the right side of the map so far. Not only this game, but this set. But it's little moments like this where now Kana able to rout the jungle of I guess that's his own side technically, so he's stealing a lot of his own jungler's farm. But able to extend on that lead. 2 levels up here over Lemogao. So if rotation time is upon us here in the next couple of minutes, you're going to have a big advantage in the solo lane if you're Pandamonium.
It's kind of just the narrative in Season 8, though, for junglers. You just have, like, several 7 experience, what it feels like sometimes. Harpy camps littered all over the map in a dream, as you realize that literally everyone else on your team can not only take that farm, but usually will if it's available. So yep. I think junglers have just accepted the fact that they're just largely going to be behind everybody else right now. As far as experience is concerned, I think the only ones who could possibly trail even further is going to be supports, since the beautiful Benevolence hit the graveyard. Yeah, rip Benevolence for the supports there. I get that one taken away by the greedy every other role on the map. Might be a skirmish happening here towards the mid lane, and another 1v1 potentially on the left side of the map, but both teams disengage things pretty quickly here. Gold Fury does stand after Greatest Scorpion got taken a little bit earlier on, so that's maybe now where these two teams start to turn their eyes, with the slight advantage for Echrome on the left, fully stacked Transcendence, and Aussie. Maybe you'd have the advantage on the left if you're Team Joystick, but Pandamonium still rolling with a couple extra kills here out of the jungle. Emilzy looking to get aggressive, but Sap and Calvin back off. Cheerio now getting chased down. It's all these like individual little engagements happening, it feels like, everywhere. None of them have turned into anything. We're back to farming after looking for some kills. No, both these teams have largely stayed neck and neck for the first 15 minutes of every match so far. It's really the first few objectives that I think where we might start to see a little bit more of the gaps taking place, but 5-man grouping now from Pandamonium is going to elicit the response here from Team Joystick to start taking heat. Hey, they might be looking for the Gold Fury.
Yep, and it's that 2-level lead in the solo lane around now where you wonder if it might be enough of an advantage for Pandamonium. Lemogao uses his ultimate. God, I was just looking for that moment to find the knockup. Or he's already used his ultimate, just waiting to transform is what I'm trying to say. Now he has transformed under the Tier 1 tower. Terrify happens, and a couple members of Team Joystick scattering on out. Emilzy left alone underneath the Tier 1. And everyone on Pandamonium is low. And now it's time for Team Joystick to capitalize. Echrome the first to strike pay dirt, and it looks like he's the only to strike pay dirt, and the call is made. Team Joystick gathering around the Gold Fury.
Have to keep in mind also Echrome's now got that Living Nightmare available, but because of how healthy and topped off everybody is in comparison to Pandamonium, they just seem so determined to try and force something underneath that T1 tower, and to an extent I can understand it, but it just seemed like blind aggression after a certain point in time. You get the relics from Sap, you call it a day, I think, at that point, because Strigob's ultimate, he was just too far away for it to really have any sort of real impact. Only got, like, I believe 1 or 2 shots out of the Astral Barrage off onto anyone, and even then, it's not like they were particularly low. It was really just Pandamonium getting sauced by Joystick's T1 tower.
Oh, goodness. Cheerio. Never really in any threat there, but always funny to see.
It's a rite of passage.
It is a rite of passage, isn't it? I don't know. I've never... It's only...
Cheerio's already lived that rite of passage.
I was going to say, I've
sure.
only been around, you know, for a couple of years, so I've only seen it once or twice. Do you distinctly remember a time where Cheerio's gotten killed by a jungle creep? Have you gotten killed by a...
Oh, yeah. Multiple times. All the time. Like,
it's a big person.
It's one of those things where, like, I shouldn't say all the time, but, like, once every blue moon,
right,
they just get you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
you're thinking,
you make a fantastic escape,
right,
you're like, I'm a god, and then a heartbeat slaps you, and you die.
And see, I think that's more respectable, as Cheerio has to use his ult to leave. Kana is going to chase him down. It's beneath the Tier 2 tower here. Aegis used by Cheerio. Kana pops the thorn, so Cheerio can't answer back at all, and that roar does lots of damage. Cheerio down. That's a solo kill for Kana. And finally, the lead that this Kulkullen has built up gets some value. Sarpei come to saves his solo laner's life. And now he's got to use Bat Out of Hell as Lemogao rampages forward.
Yeah, Cheerio looking to be avenged here by the entirety of Team Joystick. A nice Strife going to catch out 2. Might have bought some time here. Emilzy still on the escape. Joshi, Kana, Emilzy, Sarpei, not particularly healthy for it. But so far, so good. Cancel that, though. Calvin still looking for more. Streak Up now going to make the rotation in. Up into the Astral Barrage. Gets 1 onto Sap, but not sure. Well, he does find the 2nd and 3rd. Emilzy still trying to channel forward, but he's just caught himself in his own death.
Yeah, wow. And Team Joystick are able to answer out. That was a long, drawn-out fight there. And Cheerio has been able to respawn since everything started up there. So Team Joystick, and particularly Echrome, another kill. All 4 of your kills, if you're Team Joystick, are on this Chernobog. You got to keep him safe. He's got a 2-level lead over Streak Up. That's where the big advantage is. Also a 2-level lead, now 1, for Sap there in the mid lane, who's done a good job of keeping this team at bay. But, you know, I couldn't tell you the last time I've seen a Chernobog kind of pop off. And this is nothing against Chernobog. I'm just trying to literally remember the last game that I've seen where you got all 4 kills in the back pocket of this Chernobog, and it feels like protect the Echrome has got to be the mindset of Team Joystick here.
I've been trying to advocate for the Chernobog display for some time now. I really do think that this god is kind of insane right now, especially given a lot of the build pathways that you can opt for, and just the utility play that he's able to introduce, because Cherno, I think, being one of the few hunters that can actually channel an ability through the wall that's not an ultimate, so you have to remember Vicious Barrage has a lot of counterplay potential, I think, and is great for moments like what we just witnessed where Team Joystick, they do get a response. Granted, it took them a while to find it, but the fact of the matter is, Cheerio did not die for free, and Pandamonium even, they had to expend a lot just to get Kana out of there.
Yeah, it's important. Kana, I think, overextended is a matter of perspective in that last little bit there, where he does go to the Tier 2 tower, does get the Aegis and a kill on the Cheerio, but then kind of has to get bailed out by the rest of the team here. Sarpei does live, and that's important here because a couple kills on the Camazots there as well. And so Sarpei, if you're able to keep up this type of pace, that feels good. Where Cherio now has been kind of piled on a couple of times by Pandamonium. This Camazotz is going to definitely serve a unique purpose in these fights where you can finish off some of those low health targets if you're able to get back onto Sap, if you're able to get back onto E-Chrome. That's got to be where you're looking as a Camazotz.
I think it would be a lot higher on this Cama Sarpei is piloting, though, if it wasn't for the fact that E-Chrome has the Living Nightmare available, because, again, I think the best example I can think of is the one we just witnessed from Kana, because Streak Up, he's already 2 levels behind this Chernobog, but not only that, he's never going to be at an engagement at the same time as E-Chrome if Team Joystick really want to play around the global asset that this Chernobog has provided. So those picks that you would normally expect to go unanswered, because I think Kana gets out of there for free every single time. It's just E-Chrome that's able to slow him down alongside of Mogao, and then that's going to also pull the attention, of Streak Up. He's like, oh man, now I got to rotate instead of farming. It's never a fun position to be in.
Uh-oh, Sap dashed at by Kana here, and he's dancing around, and Sap survives, but not for much longer. Kana finally deals the last bit of damage thanks to the Thorns, and Sap goes down, but Calvin reinitiates. This is where Team Joystick have done well, the reinitiation, but is it good enough this time? Joshi says no, but then a trade back up on a Streak Up says yes. This is a back and forth affair. The knock up on a Joshi will get Aegis on out. Sarpei still in the midst of this team fight. One more swoop onto the perfect targets. It's E-Chrome to get onto the killing spree.
Finally, a shutdown opportunity here. That blink from Emilzy, I think, just shut down E-Chrome's plans. Originally seemed as though that Living Nightmare was going to be expended just to finish off that Terra, who was sitting so low after that engagement. But Pandamonium continue to hold on, and I think that shutdown bounty, more importantly, is going to be crucial here for Sarpei. Bound to have gotten, 1,500 gold in hand. Granted, Cherio's has 1,200 as well, but when you compare and contrast, I think that Sarpei is going to have a great opportunity here to just try to really focus out Cherio. He's been utilizing a lot of this Camazotz pressure already just to harass Sap, but you have to remember, Cherio in that Invis, not so safe against the Vampiric Screech.
And how about the game that Sap has put together here? He is 2,000 damage over everyone else in this game, notably the Tiamat. And we wondered how this Discordia would look. The answer is apparently pretty good so far. And so if that's able to keep up Team Joystick between E-Chrome and Sap, I've got to be in a great spot. So the Fury started up, but then immediately dropped by Pandamonium. And so both of these teams continuing to kind of whirlpool around one another when these objectives start up. But maybe a bit of a boost of confidence for Pandamonium that you're 4,000 gold behind, maybe a little bit less going into that last fight, and you're still able to find a few kills. But you got to be kind of cross-eyed, I think, if you're Pandamonium here in target selection, where Sap at 0-2-3 has quietly been putting out the most damage, whereas E-Chrome, obviously the juicier target as KDA goes. The target calling is going to be pivotal here in getting both of these carries gone.
Well, E-Chrome already lost his shutdown bounty thanks to Sarpei, but Emilzy, on the other hand, he might get shut down in the process here. He's looking to try and buy some time for the rotations. A nice collapse on the backside, but it's Cherio who might be in trouble.
Kana's found the opening kill, and it's on to Sap, and Cherio's the next one to go down. So now E-Chrome, who is back in base, might have to use the ultimate if he wants to get back into this fight, but Pandamonium rolling on forward. Half HP on Calvin, half HP on Lamogao, and it's another big fight win for Pandamonium, and they get some perfect targets here. They're going to get the Tier 1 tower, maybe go back for the Primal Fury as well. And so a big swing gets things right back to even.
So funny, though, seeing 21 minutes in, and that's when the first T1 tower is going to go down. Yep. Primal Fury, though, like you just mentioned, Olsen, will be the next objective of focus here for Team Joystick. And now, all that gold in hand, everybody sitting right around that 1,000 plus mark, going to be able to finish off some items, maybe start some new ones as well. But it's the Ward Vision that I'm curious if Pandamonium are going to try to slap a sentry onto everyone and look to start establishing some map pressure around the next big objective available, Fire Giant.
Yeah, Fire Giant's going to be a fun one, because we haven't, I'm trying to think, between the last two games, I don't know if we've seen a big Fire Giant brawl outside of maybe one, because these games have just kind of been won elsewhere. Now, I think all eyes kind of shift from E-Chrome, from Sap, over to Sarpé and Kana. Because Kana's just kind of walked down, hasn't he, in these last couple of fights, and that's turned a lot of Team Joystick's attention towards him. And then Sarpé with Bat Out of Hell and all the rest of the fun stuff that Camazotz does has been able to find those targets pretty effectively. Bottom of the player damage charts is not where you want Cherio to be here 22 minutes in, so there's a bit of a disparity maybe. Not damage-wise, because, you know, Sarpé is only a couple thousand ahead of Cherio, but impact-wise.
It's the impact, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because that kind of goes back to that point that we were making earlier about Sarpé, you know, on this Camazotz. He's been spending a lot of time being a nuisance towards Sap, but has started to slowly, I think, trade that on over and be like, all right, I'm going to pass the torch on over to Cherio now for who I'm going to focus out, because if you don't have that Loki burst, that Assassinate burst to harass a backline here, I think it's tough for Team Joystick to really get there, aside from E-Chrome. But if you can get Cherio and E-Chrome to work side by side, you're in business.
Yep.
But with the way that Sarpé and Kana have been playing, they are just not letting Cherio exist right now.
Yeah, it's been a complete polar opposite from what we saw in Game 2 from Cherio, where the Loki was doing a lot of the initiation, a lot of the target lockdown. As we crest over the 23-minute mark here, things right back to even. There was a 4,000 gold lead for Team Joystick, and now it's wiped off the table and right back to even there. A 4,000 XP lead for Team Joystick, and now we're right back to even. But it feels like, despite the golden XP being even, Taco, that over the last few minutes, Pandamonium have really been the team in the driver's seat, the ones really steering the direction of this game. And I know you're a big proponent of Hidden Blade, and there are a couple of them here for Pandamonium. One of them for Sarpé, maybe not all that interesting. But Joshi, remember, went Tier 2 Lost Artifact into Charon's Coin, totally skipped the starter item, and that kept the door open to a Hidden Blade a little bit later on in this Tiamat build.
It's definitely scary to see the double hit invade potential, because Sarpé, well, he's got the Bat Out of Hell to apply, and not only that, but Vampiric Screech, decent range, I think. Probably one of the longer ranging abilities aside of that Primordial Onslaught here, because keep in mind, at the very start of all this, I was talking about the fact that, you know, Sap with the Strife Unruly Magic combination might be enough to try and shut down some of this Camazotz, Terra, Colon situation, but doesn't seem as though it has really been all that beneficial for him so far. I think that the outright burst has been so problematic here for Team Joystick that even with things being largely tied up, I shouldn't even say all that much tied up, because Joystick does have, I think, a slight lead for both experience and gold, but again, everybody's nearly level 20. It's only the supports that are still lagging behind, and you've got upgraded sprint as well here.
There we go.
Joystick, they're done waiting around.
And this is where the threat can lie, is you almost get lulled into a sense of security with how slow some of these games end up going, and then at the drop of a hat, Team Joystick start up the Fire Giant. Sarpé is the only one close by. Is the Fire Giant going to get reset? No, it's not. In fact, it's going to get taken with a kill by Team Joystick. And we are here just cruising along. We're looking at the scenery and clouds going by, and Team Joystick decide, all right, we're tired of waiting. We're going to start up the Fire Giant, and look where Pandamonium is. They're doing their purple, they're doing their red, they're pushing up the waves on the left-hand side of the map. No chance to answer.
This might be a right side Phoenix attempt, since Joystick technically with the power play opportunity. Sarpé's still out for another 30 seconds or so, and more than enough shred, I think, for these objectives.
All right, Pandamonium, they got to defend this Phoenix 4v5, and they do not. An apple from Sap flies its way through the Pandamonium roster here. And so I think a tall task, to say the least, without Sarpé, who's been your backline deleter to defend your right side Phoenix there. So no surprise that it goes down, but maybe quicker than Pandamonium would have wanted, because if you're able to delay a little bit of time there, some of that FG buff falls off, and that is just not what's happened. So Team Joystick, who still haven't spent a lot of that gold, a couple members have been able to go back, are now going to take a deep breath, spend up some of that gold, and look to the re-siege.
I think what really caught Pandamonium off guard there is that while Team Joystick had initially started pulling that Fire Giant, E-Chrome was chilling. He was in dual lane, pushing down the waves. So
good point.
think that Pandamonium, seeing the Hunter in the duo side of the map, I don't think that they were expecting that Team Joystick were actually pulling that FG. It wasn't until Sarpei just happened to be walking on by, but that was also worst case scenario for Pandamonium even, because only one member being in the area and Echrome having his ultimate available, he just fast tracks
Easy ult.
to where the rest of his team is at, and I think that's what made that collapse so immediate and difficult for Pandamonium to respond to. However, silver lining, right side Phoenix being the one that they lost, they now have Sarpei up and running again, so they could look to put up a defense on these remaining T2 towers, or likely just going to be remaining Phoenix defense, but there's always a chance, I think, to turn this one around, given that the right side Phoenix always the best one to lose.
Death's Embrace yet again here for Echrome. Look, similar build, if not the exact same build. Echrome liked it in Game 2, why not here in Game 3? It's an initiation from Kana, but where's the follow-up? There's some snipes from Streak up from the back, but now Kana is all alone, and he's getting gunned down by Team Joystick, and this should be a relatively free kill here, and it's Echrome who crashes right back down after using the ultimate and picks up the first kill of this fight, and that is your 4 and what was 1 Cullen, who is now back and respawning.
Purification beads as well. Double stun going to be applied from that assassinate. Joshi going to be able to force Cherio back for the time being, but left side Phoenix has gone down. All 4 remaining members from Pandamonium trying to re-establish their HP bars inside of the fountain, and Team Joystick, they want to be as clean as possible with it. They're not taking any chances. Looking for a 3 Phoenix siege here, and Kana's still out for another 30 seconds, and that's your front line.
Great chance to do so. Active's not in a great spot. The only one that's immediately good is the Aegis, and that's all that's here for Echrome. Teleport isn't going to matter so much, so the siege is going to happen the old-fashioned way, and that's without actives. And Team Joystick find a little bit of damage tickling onto the Phoenix. 8 seconds on Kana. Team Joystick realize they only have 30 seconds on the FG. And so Team Joystick will back on off, and they get 2 Phoenixes down, 1 on far right, 1 on far left. And so that's, you know, far left is what you want when you're going for this next FG. That's great. And then far right probably feels pretty good when you're sieging, because somebody's going to have to split, and you don't get to send them right in the mid. They don't get to bounce back and forth quickly. Somebody's got to go to the entire other side. So Team Joystick in the power position now, right before we get to 30 minutes.
This is definitely a tough spot to be in if you are Pandamonium, because Team Joystick, that next Fire Giant's going to be respawning about a minute or so. Same for the right side Phoenix, and again, had it just been the right side Phoenix, I think Pandamonium would have probably been chilling and looking to contest this enhanced Fire Giant that's now going to be spawning. And the problem is, Dolson, Pandamonium, they can't really afford to let Team Joystick get an EFG for free. They have to show face and try to see if they can either win a team fight surrounding this objective or take the objective for themselves, whether it's a steal or just, again, winning that team fight so that they have the option to take it. It's just tough because you have those left side fire minions now that are going to be charging down the lane, and Joystick, they could just bleed it out of Pandamonium here even, and force and just wait for somebody to have to go clear those left side fire minions.
It's going to have to happen soon because it's a pretty decent fire wave building up there. Emilzy wants to fight right now. Echrome into the wall, out of the wall. Snipes are there, and they all connect onto Echrome, who's taking a lot of damage with the peel. It's way too good. And Echrome picks up a return kill, an opening kill onto Pandamonium here. It's a double for the Chernobog. Emilzy trying to run down the back line, but he is all alone. Joshi is there, though. Oh, and it's a big double from the Pandamonium mid laner. It's not all done, not just yet, but Joshi's not where he wants to be. It's the D side for Joystick, and you think that's got to be the game.
There's no hopes, I would imagine, Dolson. Sarpei going to be the soonest to respond there with Streaka, but 30 seconds is 30 seconds. And Cheerio, Loki player, he's just going to walk down. In fact, Mogao, upgraded teleport. He's just immediately there with the fire minion waves. No chance for Pandamonium to clear it. I like the idea, though, for Pandamonium. They recognize the fact, hey, we have these left side fire minions, Team Joystick, they're just going to bleed us dry regardless. Our best hope is to challenge them in their jungle before they have a chance to establish anything around this EFG. So I like the idea and the mentality. A for effort, but B for execution.
B for execution. Between these two teams, look, we knew that this was going to be a close set, didn't we?
Yes.
Team Joystick A little bit more consistent there down the stretch. Again, though, not without a little bit of a fumble, where Pandamonium, remember, it was like 4K in the lead, where Team Joystick, and then Pandamonium close up that gap, and we are effectively dead even kind of around the middle point of that game. E-Chrome and Sap just couldn't really get dove on consistently enough. It was happening earlier on in the game, but didn't happen later on in the game. And that's enough for Team Joystick to find the win here in game number 3. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll break down the set. Well, it's a long 3-game set, but that doesn't matter for Team Joystick. They grab the win 2-1 over Pandamonium. And things get a little bit interesting over here in EU. We're going to break that down and a whole lot more over the course of this Final Death segment. Taco is still with me. And Taco, the ebbs and flows between these two teams, I think palpable here. Team Joystick able to find themselves in the win column yet again. and a force to be reckoned with here in EU.
Now going to be sitting, I believe, at 3 undefeated sets so far for them. And I know it's still relatively early on for the Smite Challenger circuit, but definitely impressed by the way they were able to close things out for this one, because that peel for Ikram at the very end of this game, I mean, we saw this Chernobog utilizing that Living Nightmare, being as aggressive as you would want with that global advantage, but it was incredible, really, that Joystick were able to keep that Chernobog alive as long as they did, because it forced the overcommitment from Pandamonium. So even if you kill the Chernobog, it doesn't really matter when your base is under siege by fire minions and a Mogao with upgraded teleport.
Yeah, Calvin had a great set here as well. The Fafnir was swinging this game. And then, of course, Cherio. We got to give some love to Cherio. This was really where this game changed, though, you know. We are neck and neck here. 1,000 gold is really the difference going into that FG, and then Team Joystick with the wherewithal to almost bait Pandemonium, and how Ikram survives here is totally beyond me, but
that
he survives. You're right, the big knockup from Lamogao, the Aegis is inch perfect. Everything goes right here for Team Joystick, and a 7-3-6 Chernobog is going to be hard to beat.
I think that Death's Embrace paired alongside of the Aussie as well had another reason why Ikram was able to stay alive off of the knockup, gave him some chance to get a little bit of that self-sustain going. So heads up play, really, from Joystick at the end of it all. And like I'd already mentioned, Team Joystick, because of this set victory, temporarily, we don't know what's going to happen between Elysium and Snake Hunters after the fact, but point still stands.
Oh, what a swing.
There is some challenge here in the EU SCC, and I don't think Adapting and the boys are going to have it as much of an easy time as what we saw them with Split 1.
Yeah, and you know, you're always going to give Elysium the edge, I think, in these matchups. But what a swing that could happen. Elysium start the week at 2-0 on top of the standings, and with the way everything else has gone, there is a world where if Snake Hunters win, Elysium drops from first down to third. If Snake Hunters win that matchup, they'll have the tiebreaker. Snake Hunters will be in second place. And so there's a whole lot that could happen over here in the EU SEC. Again, though, you know, I think Elysium deserves every ounce of credit and probably the edge in the matchup against the Snake Hunters, but this EU SEC continues to be so competitive, so interesting, and a lot of fun to follow along with. So make sure you stay tuned after the SPL, which is coming up next, by the way, to watch that Elysium versus Snake Hunters matchup. Let's look at the schedule that we still got here in the SPL. We are only halfway done. Wow, what a long weekend, but good weekend of the SPL we've had up to this point. The Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors. The Oni Warriors put up a big fight against the Jade Dragons yesterday. And the Atlantis Leviathans versus the Camelot Kings. Quick thoughts there, Taco. Which matchup are you looking forward to the most?
As much as I love what we've been seeing from Warriors and Scarabs, I got to give it to Leviathans and Camelot Kings. I want to see some sparks fly between those two teams. They are two great teams, and I think they're a lot of fun to watch, and I'm excited to see what happens there.
And that'll be our second matchup of the day in the SPL. Our first matchup of the day, the Oni Warriors versus the Solar Scarabs, coming up next, so stick around.